Forge the Narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. This is episode 214. We are the Bell of Lost Souls podcast. I'm joined tonight by Chris Morgan and Ricky Addington.
It's pronounced Alitok.
Are you sure it's not Alitok?
And Andrew Whitaker.
What's up, homies?
What's going on? I talked about the brush soap before. I'm a believer in it. Since I looked at it on Amazon, of course, it came up and said, would you like this brush soap for $2 cheaper than it was before? I said, yes, I would. And I bought some. And it works. I haven't been able to reshape my brushes. Some of them are just so beat up and old and, well past the window for reconditioning, I believe. But I did get a noticeably more paint and pigment out of the brush when I was cleaning it when using the brush soap. Like a brush that I thought was clean, you put it through the wash here and you could see the paint being cleaned off of it.
That's always good. If you're going to put the investment on it, extra $2 off or not, you want to see something better than what your original result was.
Well, this is about prolonging the life of the brushes. That's really what it is I'm rough on my brushes. I load more paint than I should. I use them for longer than I should. Some of those brushes are ancient, but they work, whatever. And this is just getting more life out of it. So I think it's, I think it was time and money well spent.
Awesome. I don't even want to talk about some of the brushes I'm using right now. I'm literally using brush soap every 5 or 6 times back to the water pot. I'm using brush soap just to try to keep some shape to it. This thing's on its last legs, but we got a tournament coming up, so I'm doing everything I can here to save this bad boy.
Same with us. Obviously, Warzone Atlanta, we're on the eve of that this weekend. We're going to be streaming out live coverage to the YouTube channel and doing some go lives on Facebook too. But there'll be live coverage of the event and almost a show. It'll be a show that we do live there over the weekend for as long as we can. I don't know, as long as the hotel bandwidth supports us, we're going to be doing it. But we've been making lots of terrain and stuff getting ready for this. And when you're doing lots of dry brushing, you are rough on your brushes. And so, even the fact after all that dry brushing and stuff and doing big pieces of terrain, stuff that's going to block line of sight, because it's so vital, is you need area terrain and things that block line of sight that really will impact people's enjoyment of the tournament. And it's not easy to do, it's not easy to provide that when you have that many tables, but we have done it. It's going to be a great time. And that was one of the primary reasons I was cleaning out so many brushes was doing coats and coats of dry brushes and stuff on terrain.
The tournament organizers, the general staff, and Forge the Narrative have put a big emphasis on the terrain this year, especially with 8th edition. Line of sight blocking terrain just more important than it ever has been in the game. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm so excited for this weekend. It's going to be great.
This is going to be a great time, and I think it's continuing in the tradition of exciting times in Atlanta. And I'm really looking forward to just the energy in the room is great. Just tune in. Hopefully some of that translates over the airwaves. And we'll, of course, be bringing some coverage after the fact as well. In the middle of this show, I'm going to insert a segment with Mr. Rob Symes, who is now one of the members of the Honest Wargamer show. Was able to get to sit down with him, and I think you'll enjoy that piece as well.
Yeah, that dude is a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool dude, very much respected for his work on the Age of Sigmar side of the Warhammer scene, I guess, and that's a little bit about what we talk about, but we also are going to talk about how one approaches building an army from that side of the shop. Anyway, it was a fun talk. I think you're going to like it. So,
Paul, are people going to be able to track how the tournament is going on Best Coast Pairings?
On Friday night, the 3-man team event, the Friday Night Fracas, will be in Best Coast Pairings, where people will be able to see list and track pairings from the 3-man team event. So that is the Friday night event. One of the things we're adding to give it that whole kind of full weekend convention feel.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun format. We're testing it, of course, to see how this plays. That will lead into a larger 3-man tournament event early next year. I'm really excited to see how this is going down. And I know a lot of people are preparing. Ricky, I think you've been preparing hard for this 3-man tournament.
I'm literally in the middle of preparing right now. I'm losing my mind. I'm now wearing old man reading glasses. I'm jacked up on caffeine, and I told my wife not to talk to me for the next 2 days. So, yep, preparing a lot. I'm not happy about it.
Oh man, well, this is a really exciting time. We could talk about this for a whole show, but I want to talk about some of the Tyranid stuff. You know, we went over some of the basics last week, and yes, I do know that healing a unit does not cost you points. I apologize if that translated poorly. And when we were talking about some of the spawning of the units from the Turbogon, Ricky, that was you and I think we kind of butchered some of the intent. But that thing is a dual purpose. It can spawn new units, but it also heals units. And I'm fairly certain we understood that. It just might not have come out in the edit very well.
Right. So healing a unit doesn't cost points. Spawning a new unit costs points.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
Reserve points.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I thought that's what we were saying.
Well, we did.
we may not have. Yeah.
But my editing, got fat fingers sometimes. Who knows what?
It'll happen.
Or maybe we didn't. Maybe it didn't say it right. Who knows? Whatever. Thank you for bearing with us, and thank you for the people that constructively pointed that out. I mean, and then there was a lot. They were like, "Hey, guys, come on. This is how it works." Like, oh, you're right. You are. I agreed with them all, of course.
Do you guys even play 40k? I mean, come on.
I don't summon demons. I don't summon gaunts.
You have no idea the level of loyalty I operate at.
How do you think I feel? I play Dark Angels, so I hear it every day that I play Chaos, and I really, really want to.
I try not to make that joke very often.
Do you, Paul? Do you?
I try. I try. But I posted something up on the FTN Facebook page about what people would like to see from the Blood Angel Codex, and there was some people cried out for nerfs.
I saw that. I was like, "Come on, you've got to be joking."
I questioned him. I'm like, "Hey, man."
That guy had to have been joking. Right?
Yeah,
there's no way he was serious.
No, I questioned him like, "Hey, man, what environment do you play in where the Blood Angels need to be toned down?" And he did come back with he was just joking.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
I hope.
Because I was like, I need to know what his opponents are doing.
Maybe he cracked the code. I don't know. Maybe he's like, well, if you just took this and this, then win all the time. But there was a lot of people that of course, in part of their hopes, and it's a nice discussion on the page. And we'll get something started like that about Dark Angels too, because obviously, we got the spoiler about a couple of more codexes coming, Dark Angels and Blood Angels being in the list. We're very excited.
Oh yeah, the hype train is going full steam. Paul can attest to the amount of wild brainstorming I've been doing since the announcement went live. It may be a little pathetic.
With the way that this, the index to codex releases have gone, I mean, we've seen huge, sharp jumps in utility and power in every codex, with the exception of Grey Knights. They stayed kind of just ho-hum, but all these other...
Grey Knights are not ho-hum. Grey Knights are good. Strike squads are real good.
Well, yeah, when they're backed up by your 3 manticores and your conscripts, they're really good.
5 million.
I'm going to professionally disagree. I respect that you're a good player and you have awesome takes.
Demons are popular. Even things like obliterators are very popular and guaranteed 3 damage on those guys.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know.
And bolters.
Are you saying that because demons are popular, therefore Grey Knights are good?
I'm saying that because demons are popular, that Grey Knights... Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's exactly what he's saying.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, no, that's fair.
They're good without demons being there, but they're really good when demons are there.
I'm like, when know you're not going to make it, you're not going to beat a 3-round tournament without encountering someone with a demon keyword.
I definitely am not decrying any of that. I'm just saying that I objectively disagree. I think that Grey Knights are a middling codex at best. I have not seen a pure Grey Knight army at all in 8th edition. So that's just me anecdotally saying I don't think they're that good. That said, I only point them out to be like the index jump for guard from guard to their codex is big. The jump for Ultramarines from the index to the codex was pretty massive. So I think, and that's on trend. I think everything that has gotten markedly better with the release of the codex. I mean, Eldar, goodness gracious, how much better are they now that they have their own codex? So my point in all of that is saying that if you are a Dark Angels or Blood Angels player, there's a lot to be hopeful for. There's proof positive, like the proof is in the pudding. Basically, everything else has gotten a ton better. So there's no reason to suspect that we won't also get a ton better.
Yeah, we saw wholesale point reductions in the Eldar book. We don't see quite as many in the Tyranid book, and in fact, some things do go up in points, but the utility just, I mean, once you start adding in, like we talk about this all the time, you got the base stats, you've got the like Craft World chapter tactic type attributes, then you've got the stratagems, then there's power, you know.
The compounding of the new stratagems, the new, in Guard's case, the new orders, regimental bonuses, all those kinds of things just layer in. So even if you aren't changing point values, even though across the board, a lot of times we're seeing point cuts plunge, I mean, there's tons of value being added with all of the additional rules. So even if your points do stay static, you're still getting a ton better. And there's just no way that for Blood Angels, for example, obviously we're kind of a Blood Angels happy podcast around here, but a Death Company Dreadnought is good. It has good rules right now in the index, but it costs more than a Redemptor Dreadnought. And how is this even a thing, right? And so that just saying that is just
that doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right.
I know it doesn't. It just sounds silly, but it's true, and I think that they're going to correct that. Those points are going to come way down. The Librarian Dreadnought is not worth 200 and something points. He's good, but he should be 150 points.
Yeah, he needs another attack too, if you ask me.
I definitely.
Totally needs another attack.
And he should be faster. He should be as fast as the Furiosos.
I'm hoping, Andrew, hoping beyond hope that we get Wings of Sanguinius back as a psychic power, and that it actually does something useful.
I saw on that comment thread that Paul solicited, was like, hey, this book's coming out. What do we want? And somebody said, Wings should work just like Warp Time.
Give the whale with something like that.
I think that would be awesome. And if you can, warp time a Dreadnought up and do some work with it, those are all things that are going to be possibilities. The psychic tree is going to be great. And big improvements are going to be across the board. And as we've said, we've kind of been our common refrain as we've marched through these Codex releases. The more animals you release into the jungle, the more the ecosystem becomes. 8th edition will become a better game with the more creatures that are in the ecosystem. So the more beat stick lists that are available, I think the more fun tournaments will become.
Yeah, I'm real happy they've got this breakneck release speed or Codex speed, because we know we're not going to see another edition. We're not going to see our big market rules change or whatever for quite some time. But come February next year, we're going to be playing with what everyone can consider a complete game.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that too, because right now it feels like, a lot of us who are still waiting on those books, kind of feel like you're playing with your hand behind your back.
You're saying it hey, we're still waiting on those books. Like you didn't play in a world where you used to have to wait years for new content, right? For whatever your faction, you used to wait years for new content. I know that expectations change with the current reality, but this is still for a release schedule for a company. This is good, and we're going to get. And I'm using the real term. I'm using the term complete. In air quotes, but we're going to have it a lot sooner than we have had any other edition.
Yeah, I mean there's some codexes. How long? What's the longest codex out there that between?
I think it was Orcs in 3rd edition, I think.
I remember one time I was playing
Dark Eldar was also 12 years. I think Dark Eldar might have been 12 years between codex.
Somebody playing with the black and white codex, you're like, what is that?
Well, the Orc codex, that was the big joke, is that it didn't even have, they released the codex and it didn't even have a summary in the back. It was just, a long time. But let's talk about the one we do have right now, and that is Tyranids. And we talked a lot about, I think, the Broodlord and the Gene Stealers in the last show, because their different deployment technique, I mean, it's brutal. It really is going to be something that you can outwit your opponents with using the Gene Stealer deployment, and the Broodlord being fairly inexpensive point wise and how killy he is in combat. I think people are going to see him played. And on the other side of that, a lot of people have Winged Hive Tyrants. And so we might see them be played because they just exist out there. So many of them exist.
It's everybody has mandatory 4 in their collection. If you played Tyranids, you got 4 of them in your collection.
Well, now with the swooping assault ability. Now the Hive Tyrant with wings is 170 points if I remember correctly, this is just base. Yeah, Hive Tyrant Wings is 170 points. But he gets the swooping assault ability. So during deployment, you can set up the Hive Tyrant with wings circling high above instead of placing it on the battlefield. At the end of any of your movement phases, it can swoop down, set it up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away from the enemy model. So let's get the deep strike mechanic, as we know. But I don't think we've had the ability to do this with a Hive Tyrant outside of like bringing it up through one of the tunnels before.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I think the real reason why this is a big deal is because of the other mechanics, both the
like Synapse and Shadow of the Warp and that kind of stuff,
and the Hive Fleet stuff with that, potential +1 to your assault range, rerolling assault dice, that kind of thing.
But 9 inches is a lot less scary of a charge when you get +1 and you're re-rolling. So
exactly,
at that point, comes from the adrenal glands. You do have to buy those. They're not expensive though.
Right, so you're paying a marginal point cost to on an already expensive model that you want to get into combat. And what this mechanic does, I think, in very large part, is it prevents your opponent from shooting this incredibly expensive and important model. Whether I go first or second, I don't have to worry about the seize the initiative roll and your guard gun line just blowing away my Hive Tyrant. I can put him safely up above the clouds, and then when I need him, he's in the spot that I need him to be at. And then he's essentially got a rerollable 8 to get into an assault on the turn that I bring him in. That's great board control utilization.
That's with a Hive world, or if you're
taking that particular Hive Fleet.
Yeah, if you're taking Behemoth, yeah.
Right, and I'm just saying.
Not that you shouldn't. I'm just saying that is not a base stat of the ability. That's all I'm saying.
Correct. I'm just saying, I'm pointing to that one particular combination of rules as saying, hey, this is why that deep strike ability makes more sense now and why it's important and valuable. And to Paul's credit, he just pointed out, in terms of board control and taking advantage of Synapse range, getting the model to where you need him after you've seen a full turn of moving and shooting develop. This is really handy.
You can turn him into a gun platform still, and we talked about there are stratagems that let you boost up the shooting. We're seeing a lot of these over the codexes where there'll be a stratagem that increases the damage by 1 point or whatever, so it turns like a 1 damage gun into a 2 damage gun, and that becomes a lot more significant.
Well, that's essential if you're going to try and take out some of those big, heavy, the Primarchs, some of the bigger, meatier 15, 20, 25 wound models. Plinking away with 1 damage guns is not going to get the job done when you're trying to shoot a Valhallan Baneblade. But suddenly those are doing 2 damage a pop. I'm all of a sudden 100% more effective. Makes a big difference.
Yeah, I agree with that. You're able to maximize when you do get one of those wounds through. It becomes a lot more damage, which I think like you just said, very important. The Hive Tyrant does have a 4+ invulnerable save base. I think that's pretty good, and it is a psyker. The Hive Tyrant can attempt to manifest 2 psychic powers in each friendly psychic phase and attempt to deny 1. Now, it's important to point out then, in all these brain bugs, all these HQ type Tyranid units, almost all of them have Shadow of the Warp, and most of them are psychers. Or I should say a large portion of them are psychers.
Yeah, that's the part I was just about to bring up was, with the Flying Hive Tyrant coming down, it's not just this shooting potential that he's got. He's also got the ability to psychically shut down stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, Chris, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I want you to finish your point, but can you guys rehash the Shadow of the Warp rule? Just kind of give a refresher on what it does now.
Yeah, the Shadow of the Warp is enemy psychers must subtract 1 from any psychic test they make if they are within 18 inches of any units with this ability. Tyranid psychers are not affected.
Gotcha. So does that stack if you're within 18 of multiple ones?
I don't believe it stacks, no.
No, it does not. However, it does not stop the Hive Tyrant from unleashing psychic shenanigans on enemies that are close by when he comes down. So you've got some mortal wound potential on top of the straight up shooty damage potential and assault potential. Like a model like that throwing his weight around in somebody's backfield, you have to deal with it. And for the same points cost as it was in the index, it's at +1 invulnerable save and +1 toughness.
Being toughness 7, that's kind of a big deal. And I think that we sort of I don't want to say frowned on it. Frown's too strong of a word, but we mentioned that you might want to look in another direction because of its 12 wounds, that you couldn't protect it really from shooting. But of course, this ability to deep strike does the same thing. You're going to be in threat range of someone the turn you bring him down without the risk of getting him shot off the table by not going first.
Yep.
Something that it pairs with decently well also is the gargoyles. The gargoyles they're 6 points apiece. So take that for, kind of your tolerance is for buying what could be potential throwaway units. But the gargoyles also get the deep strike ability. So I think it's possible to also, if you're not playing one of these hive worlds, or maybe for some reason you didn't have the points for adrenal glands, you're not sure you're going to get this charge off, or you don't feel more confident about it, you could protect or kind of screen your hive tyrant from things like smiting or whatever with gargoyles, because they are able to keep up or appear in the same place as your hive tyrant.
Now, the gargoyles, they have some other abilities, too, that kind of help as a backup and an assist to the hive tyrant, aside from just, like, bubble wrapping potential, right?
They have a blinding venom, which is, their weapons are free. The flesh borer and the blinding venom are 0 points. But the blinding venom is, if a unit suffers any unsaved wounds from this weapon, your opponent must subtract 1 from hit rolls for that unit until the end of the turn. So if you do charge, you get one of these wounds in with the blinding venom from your 20 gargoyles for 120 points or whatever, and then that unit that you charged with the hive tyrant is going to have a harder time swinging back on that hive tyrant, and the gargoyles too. But you're really protecting that hive tyrant with this.
How many points are the gargoyles on their own?
That's just 6 points apiece.
Just 6 points apiece. Okay, so it's not unreasonable to think that you could have a sizable unit of these things come down, and they are troops, are they not?
No, they are fast attack. Gargoyles are fast attack. But they do say the hail of living ammunition. If a unit contains 20 or more models, you can reroll wound rolls of 1 when it shoots.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't turn it down. I wouldn't say, I have 20 of these, I don't want this rule, no thank you.
You can have up to 30-man gargoyle squads. So, if you'd bought in on that before, still usable now.
Well, depending on the kind of missions that you're doing, having a unit like that, even though it's not troops and objective secured, may still have some advantage if you're trying to get like progressive line breaker points or something like that. I think that if we can see gargoyles get some play, either in the support of the hive tyrant or not, I mean, 6 points a model for something like that, I would kill to have models in my army that I could field for 6 points.
They do have strength 4, assault 1 guns. They hit on 4s though. That's a problem. So I don't see these guys doing a lot of output. And even in the fight phase, they hit on 4s with a strength 3 weapon. That's the blinding venom is strength 3. But anything can wound anything. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be relying on these to do a lot of work for me, other than being a support unit or a screen.
All right. Seems reasonable.
Somebody prove me wrong out there, I'm sure. But that's the way I kind of see these guys, as being smite catchers.
I think that's spot on. And just as importantly, and what shouldn't be overlooked, is they're quick, right? These gargoyles, they're not moving, what are they, 10 inches a turn?
They move 12.
They move 12. That's a really, really incredibly fast bullet sponge. That means that they can, one of the big things about conscript blobs, and I think, Ricky, you definitely agree with this, I don't play conscripts, but I play enough guard infantry to know that shifting tabletop dynamics is one of those things that they really struggle with. It's hard to redeploy them to be an adaptable screen. If you're playing against a highly mobile unit opponent, deep striking, or against enough shooting where they tear a hole through one part of your screen, it's very difficult to redeploy back into that section to fill those gaps with guard and with other screens that exist right now. These gargoyles are not going to have that problem. They're going to be jumping all over the table. They're going to be massively fanned out, huge unit coherency blobs, 10 model units jumping 12 inches a turn. That's tough. That's going to be, if you're playing against an opponent with a vehicle heavy list, in a couple of turns, this 40, 50-point unit is just going to be all over those vehicles, basing them up into assault, keeping them from shooting, forcing things to fall back.
That's 60 points 60,
for 10. I'm sorry.
Not a lot of points. 60 seems to be that kind of, in my opinion, the sweet spot, for units and effectiveness.
And are these guys a troops choice, or are they still in fast
attack?
They're
fast attack.
So, I mean, with the utility of that Outrider detachment, you're looking at sub 200 points to put 30 of these guys on the table, just jumping around causing havoc. There's tons of upside, tons of bright spots for that.
I really like them. I was everything I kept like getting ready to give you and then you just said it though. So like you every point that you made me think of while you were talking, you then said. So I have nothing else to say.
Echo City.
Yeah, it was. All I can do is echo that. Really, yeah. But just think about what you do with other with Brimstone Horrors, with conscripts, all these blob. All these screening units. Well, now you take Gargoyles who can fly over those screening units. They're also better in assault than most of those screening units. They're fast enough so that when you have a big one, that's the biggie. Because if, like you said, if you've ever tried to shift a conscript squad after it's taken casualties, you just don't do it. Like they just start dying. And
these Gargoyles are not survivable, but you are talking about doing precision application with them. I know we're talking about like screens or whatever, but you guys are now discussing like precision application of these things.
Well, I just kind of see them as both being they're as much as they're a shield and a scalpel.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I just wanted to make it clear that we're talking about, like, we're not talking about them bunkering, sitting down on an objective and holding it for the whole game. We're talking about like blocking and tackling and stick and move and jab and stuff. I mean, there's
those kind of probing techniques that those fast units are so capable of doing. I mean, if you're a Tyranid player and you get a move in advance and a move in advance out of a unit of Gargoyles, I promise you your opponent is going to have other things that they want to shoot at besides the Assault 1 BS4 plus guys. So as the target priority, they're pretty low in the food chain as far as what your opponent really needs to be shooting at for your offensive output. So as a result of that, I can very easily see this 60-point squad getting a move and assault, and then a move in advance, and then a move and assault. And you're talking about covering 24 to 28 inches before the assault roll. That's a massive amount of table control for what those kind of stick and move, jabbing, probing things, and contesting objectives. A good way to get progressive objectives, a good way to move the relic in those types of missions as well. So a lot of utility. I anticipate people taking a squad or a squad to 3 squads of Gargoyles in just about every Tyranid list that I so far.
Well, another reason that I like the Grey Knights so much, and I'm only using this in comparison, I'm not going to take us on a sidetrack, is the ability to deep strike in an otherwise kind of a stagnant army, guard. Most of the things don't move very fast in the guard, or at least the big stuff doesn't move very fast.
You are 1,000% right. That's why I'm taking horses, right? Because I can outflank them and move them 10 inches a turn. So
just getting him in on some of these like tournament winning things, where you need to be on an objective across the table. You may never get there with a guy that moves 5 inches a turn or whatever, but if you can at least make your opponent start making decisions because you deep strike it on there, or you move 48 inches over the course of a couple turns, you're positioning yourself to do better, and you're causing decision points for your opponent. And for 60 points, you could do that with this unit.
Yeah, and 10 wounds, and the way the synapse stuff is going to work, you're probably not going to be losing a ton of models to leadership roles either. So, all in all, a lot of utility.
Even if you do lose them, it was 60 points. Good game. They're so cheap, and the utility is great. I like them. I highly recommend them. I say just make a whole army of them. They only got so many bullets to shoot at you.
I will say though, they have they're kind of a fiddly model. Gargoyles are kind of a pain in the butt. They're like
think about the people that have the old metal ones.
Oh my goodness!
Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, T's and P's. FTN says T's and P's.
Oh man,
that's just one of those models. It's like, oh, and you lost one. Oh, I'm just going to get this one right here. Oh, nope, got 5. And then you just got a whole bundle, and they stick together.
Them approximately where they were on the table.
They're all going to fall over.
There's probably somebody out there. They were just listening in New Zealand, and then they got to their destination and turned their car off, and then they were like, "Oh man, the Force Narrative guys were talking about Gargoyles," and they turned the car off right before we talked about what a pain model they are, and so they're going to go buy a bunch, and they're going to be like, "Nope, sorry guys, I can't do it. I'm not bringing 40 of these things."
Buyer beware, but they have a lot of utility. A lot of utility.
It's a good unit. It's an iffy model.
I want to talk about Hive Guard now. That's a unit that is kind of peaked, and I don't want to say peaked, but it's been very popular at certain points over the Tyranid lifespan, especially after they came out, and like when vehicles were real popular, like they would just put rip holes and falcons and wave serpents and that kind of stuff. But the Hive Guard still have the ability to deny cover, even though cover is not that big of a deal as far as it's not like it used to be.
Right.
But it still matters.
I think their big thing, too, aside from that, is strength 8 weapons, and they don't require line of sight to shoot. In an addition where line of sight blocking terrain is so important, being able to just say, oh, by the way, I don't care, and you don't get your cover save anyways. How do you feel?
Yeah, heavy 2, strength 8, neg 2 save, D3 damage. 36-inch range, so you got a little bit of reach out and touch someone. And then they have an option for a shock cannon, and that is a strength 7, assault D3, 24-inch weapon that has a neg 1 armor save with D3 damage. But if you target a vehicle and you make a wound roll of 4+, the target suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to any other damage. If you make a wound roll of 6+, inflict D3 mortal wounds instead.
Jeez.
Yeah, and that's in addition, right?
Yeah, in addition, yeah.
So you have to decide for yourself if you want a little bit of a buffer range with the 36 inches, or if you feel like you can get up close and personal within counterattack distance, but have the potential to roll out some mortal wounds against their tanks.
Well, you take regular old Hive Guard the first week at your game store, and then when your buddy brings all those tanks, you're like, you know what? I got something for you.
I mean, being able to throw out some mortal wounds on some plague burst crawlers or whatever those things are called, that would just feel good.
Those things stick around.
I worry about the price point on these Hive Guard. That's always kind of been the sticking point for Hive Guard generally. They've kind of been on the high end of points cost. 36 inches of range on those big guns. That's definitely a nice amount of reach out and touch somebody, but it's, that's not a las cannon. We're not talking about a manticore here with 100. We're a comparable number of points per shot.
The Impaler cannon is expensive. The Hive Guard himself is 18 points, but the Impaler cannon is 30 points.
Yeah, so you're talking 50 points a model for how many shots again was it on the Impaler cannon?
2
shots. That's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow at nearly 60 points. As good as that profile is, you're still talking about D3 damage. So
the shock cannon is cheaper, is 21 points.
And can you take that in addition, or is it
No, it's a replacement.
Okay, yeah. So, maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe there's going to be some list designs that are like, no, the Hive Guard are absolutely essential. You take them every time. But right now, for that same 60 points, I think there are probably better places to spend those points in the Tyranid.
Well, I mean, I agree what you just said, but then you also mentioned like maybe there's a situation you're not thinking about, and I think that maybe that situation is there are 2 ways to build a Tyranid list still. You can build one that's focused on ranged weapons, and maybe something like a Hive Guard fits into that. Or you can do one that's focused on assault, and then I don't think you want to be sacrificing points to something like this shooting, because my belief in assault, and this will always be the case, if you're playing an assault-based army, the more points you commit to the assault, the better you'll do.
Right. It kind of goes back to the old saying we had on the show about if you're going to do something like try and dominate a phase, Tau dominated the shooting phase, demons dominated the psychic phase, etc., etc. Eldar dominated the movement phase and the shooting phase with the same model.
and the psychic phase.
And the psychic phase. They did everything really well. But I think that still holds true for list design in 8th edition. While I would say that I think that some multi-high fleet builds that involve a heavy shooting Firebase in the back with some very aggressive assault elements up front. I also am very much kind of in tune with what Paul is saying here, in that if you commit to something, you're going to do really well. So all the people that are a little nervous about how do I make my Hive fleet look like 3 separate armies, because they've always only been the same thing all the time, you still can probably get some use out of it by sticking to one strategy.
That's my point, though. I mean, right in line with what Andrew was saying is like, you maybe in a strategy you can fit some of these things that might seem a little bit on the fringe, but yeah, I think once I'm paying, because you can't just get one Hive Guard. I think you've got to buy a couple of them. Let me confirm that though.
Yeah, I think it's squads of 3.
Yeah. Hive Guard is base unit 3. That's a lot of points you're gonna have to spend for a 36-inch weapon that's not a mana core.
Right, with 2 shots.
If I'm building a Firebase, or I think that my only weakness is vehicles, and I want to go with a shot cannon, and I know they're going to be scuttling up behind, all my Gene Stealers or whatever, then I could see a line of play for that.
There's no doubt, without having a full comprehensive time to sit down, read the book, and do some list designing for a couple of weeks so we can rule them out definitively. I'm just kind of giving my cold read opinion that I think that the Hive Guard leaves something a little bit to be desired.
Yeah, but I think simply for that price point, though. I mean, the shot cannon is an assault weapon, and there's a little bit of value in that.
For sure, but it's also a 24-inch range, so it needs to be, right? Because you're going to have to close the gap to shoot it at what you really need to shoot it at.
As adrenal gland, you can get 1 extra inch closer without having to worry about it too much.
1 inch makes a big deal.
With the roll, you get your advance, with the adrenal glands. But anyway, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. I'll do that spot with Rob, and then we'll come back and do more Tyranid talk.
Right on.
Forged Narrative is brought to you by Dicehead.com. www.dicehead.com. Games, hobby, supplies, and comics. They have it all.
Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. I'm joined today by Rob Symes.
Hi everyone. Nice to talk to you, Paul.
Honest Wargamer.
Yes, I work for the Honest Wargamer. Yes, indeedy.
I want to know a little bit about that because that's a new endeavor that you're starting. I assume with some other folks as well in collaboration. But can you tell us a little bit about that and where they can find you? Because I've listened to your first show and I enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you very much. You can find us on thehonestwargamer.com. We have a Twitter account, Honest Wargamer. YouTube is The Honest Wargamer. Facebook is The Honest Wargamer. It's real easy. We don't have an Instagram yet, and we're toying with the idea of a Snapchat, but I don't really know what we would do.
Maybe create your own filter or something? Can you do that?
Oh, yeah. You can get us, yes. We're supported by other people who run us on Patreon, and I suppose that's the key element of our show, is it's completely independent. So, and I know that's true for some other people out there as well, but we're not sponsored or affiliated with anyone, so that allows us to have that honest moniker, so that everyone knows that whatever you hear is our opinion.
You've seen Talladega Nights, the movie?
Yes.
There's on the front part of his car, it's like, just me or whatever, with a cougar or something. Can you...
I'm going to go find that now. Yeah, just use that as my mantra.
Well, man, thanks for taking time out of your day to come on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Like, we spoke before, didn't we, on Warhammer Live, and that was a pleasure. I honestly, truth be told, didn't really know much about you before you came and sat in the chair, which is basically true of most of my time there. But you are hilarious, and everyone listening must think that you're ace. And I became a fan that day. So it's cool to get to talk to you again.
Thank you so much. That was a great day. Release of 8th edition, streaming out live, no safety net, just doing what you can,
oh, I know. That's fun. Doing live is fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was great to work with you then. So again, this is just one of the reasons we're talking right now, because it was just such a great time.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
You are known for playing Age of Sigmar, Warhammer Fantasy, and that. And I want to talk a bit about that, because I think that the folks that listen to my show most of the time are either on the fringe about Sigmar or, wouldn't know where to start, but they are competitive mindset. And I think that how you sit down and build a list, and maybe it also translates into where you're going to start buying your figures. So if you don't know where to start, don't know what to look at and see the value, how do you even get into it? And I thought you might be a good person to talk to.
This is perfect. Because this is effectively the key thing that I left Games Workshop to do with the Honest Wargamer. Because effectively there is general knowledge of what you could pick up or what is strong currently, and we all talk about the meta, but I think generally the meta is actually a bunch of very loud people talking with assumed knowledge as opposed to actual facts. That's how I feel about metas generally, and it tends to be someone who can just see beyond everyone, just kind of talking to each other in the same vein. That those people tend to do well. But that's my experience and my thoughts anyway. Well, it's definitely been my experience.
Well, we chase, on the competitive side, I think we chase a lot of point efficiency. but actually playing the game. And I mean, it goes beyond that. I mean, especially, you know, with missions and in tables and stuff. And I mean, again, there's a lot of factors. And so you're right. It's not just what's effectively strong on the paper. Way more complicated than that.
Way more complicated. So the thing I left to do with the Honest Wargamer is exactly what we do. We do rundowns of a single unit, and to cover that in its entirety. And it's that old adage, right, where if everyone listening is a competitive gamer, that's great, and just go and try and find the strong things. But yeah, it is more complicated than that, and it takes a lot of conversation. It takes like I love battle reports, right? Good example. You go watch a battle report and go, okay, maybe I could learn something from that battle report. But all you'll learn is a general sense of a thing, as opposed to something in the minutia. And competitive gaming is all about that minutia, right? It's knowing that there's an extra inch movement or an extra average pip of damage over 5 turns that makes something better or worse than the other choice. So you have to really delve down deep, and there really isn't a resource for delving down deep. That's the other problem as well with Sigmar. So that's one of the things I'm trying to approach. But ultimately, and I mean this in all seriousness, kick off with what you like the look of, and then or you like the idea of, and then build a competitive army for there. And people who tell you that you can't do that, especially as 40k was with 7th edition, that probably was true. But with Age of Sigmar, I haven't seen that be true, and that mainly is because of the double turn mechanic. Because
so you gain an advantage. You can make, if something goes twice before it's taken off the table, it may have a bigger impact. Is that?
Yeah, but you can also be braver. And we'll get onto this when it comes to like army list construction later, or maybe I can touch on that. But effectively, what it means is it's I think it's very, very hard to guess. Or not to guess, to work the maths out on the stuff. And I know lots of people are like either for or against the double turn, but for me it is this brilliant kind of leveler on the field between people who play very averagely, safely and coordinatedly, like on the tabletop, and then the people that will just do something absolutely foolish. Because 1 in 10 times or 1 in 100 times, the foolish thing won't work or the brave thing won't work, but it will sometimes. You know, it's kind of
when it does.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the 300 at the Battle of Thermopylae. Like, you know, like realistically, like, you know, I know there was a tactic to, you know, unite all of Greece, but realistically, maybe it shouldn't have worked.
And you think that can happen in your average Sigmar game?
Yeah, it can. And some people will gear themselves up to do it. I know many people who don't even take that risk, and they still try to work out that very points efficient thing.
Well, I think what you're trying to say, though, I mean, pardon me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think what you're trying to say is that the first step is finding something that you really like the look of, or a story, something in the lore you like, and you will be able to make things happen on the table.
Yes, or a mechanic that you like as well.
Okay.
Like I played this weekend, and there's a very, very unlikely chance to make Croxagore, which is like a Seraphon unit, so lizardmen. There's a chance to make them do 10 mortal wounds per one. So you can have a unit of 6 and you can do 120 mortal wounds. You probably will never even do 1 mortal wound realistically, because you have to roll like a 4, then a 6, and then a 6. You have to roll a 1. Like, it's very complicated. And then you got to do like 3 or 4 different spells on it. But that's basically all I was trying to do this weekend. I wasn't trying to win the games. I was just
wanting to make that happen, to get your fatality off in Mortal Kombat.
Exactly. And I did it. Yeah. And this guy's I just one-shotted this guy's monster off the board, and I was just like, get it off. But then it failed every other turn. So, and I suppose that's really the key element with that. If you wanted to win, you can definitely have another conversation about point stuff, I think.
Well, I mean, winning is, I mean, we all like to win a little bit more than we lose. I think that's the goal. That's the realistic goal of anyone who plays a war game.
Yeah, I agree.
But we spend hours and hours, like thinking about our army, and only a few hours playing in the ratio sense. So you have to have some attachment to your army that's beyond just some stats on a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's why I like the rules that can do a silly thing or a fun thing, because you get that potential to do something crazy.
So what are you playing right now? I mean, is it Lizardmen? Is that your army, or is that the one?
So in Age of Sigmar, I'm playing Seraphon. Although I'm pretty certain that I can make. I did a rundown on some death units for Halloween, and I was like, I think I can make a really functional death army, which is generally considered in competitive Age of Sigmar that they're just trash.
Really?
The entire faction, yeah.
I mean, like, it's not the wet and the dry undead anymore, is it? Or is it?
No, it's just, previously Tomb Kings were good because they were points efficient, and they were really solid, and they had some very strong mechanics. But with the lack of any releases in the past 3 years, with the only battle tome being Flesh Eater Courts, which again they lack a whole bunch of stuff. It's an entire faction that doesn't have shooting.
No,
so I mean, there's small bits here and there, but realistically nothing.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing any ghouls with crossbows or anything.
No. But that's me saying that everyone assumes that the Death faction is not very good, or it's generally considered to be. But when I started going through it in all seriousness, I was like, I think there's an army here that you can put together where you can try to compete. I'm not saying you're going to auto win, but you can try to compete. So there's some room there. But yeah, I'm definitely playing with my Seraphon because I think there's some strong choices there. But more importantly, there's some really fun choices. They're not necessarily my opponent doesn't get to partake. It's just I have to play with them, which is fun. So that's my idea. And then the 40k, I'm playing Death Guard, and I was stupidly trying to use Gene Stealer Cults, but that was just a mistake on my part. It's just they suck.
They lost a little bit. They did lose a couple of steps here, and I'm hoping they get that back, over the course of the Tyranid and Gene Stealer Cult release.
Yes. Well, it's really fun. Me and Dan from Warhammer TV, Dan, we talked about Gene Stealers a lot, and he's, we're like, go Gene Stealer heavy, and I'm like, well, then, that's a Tyranid army, and then he's like, well, go kind of like conscripts or Lehman Russ's heavy on this side sort of thing, and I'm like, well, then it's a guard army. It's not really a Gene Stealer, like it's a little bit of both.
I see what you mean.
And there's some strength. They've got some amazing psychic powers, and they've got some other cool stuff. I just don't think they're there. I think they're super overpointed. I don't know what your feelings are.
I think they're a fringe army right now. And to your same point, if you're trying to make a Gene Stealer Cult army and you're taking a bunch of Lehman Russes and Guard, then you probably need to focus on the Guard side.
Exactly. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited about Death Guard. I think that's going to be quite fun playing with them for a while. But I have a lot of armies, so I get a little bit.
Well, they've got some killer combos like we're talking about too. But that's kind of the theory about how to build an army, because it's one of those things to where, like, if you find a mechanic that you like and it assumes that you need to take, or I should say assumes it necessitates you taking a certain thing, like for instance, Plague Marines and that grenade guy, my buddy calls him the Malevolent Booger Lord. I can't remember his exact. But you've got to combo all that together. So do you look for the similar things on the Sigmar side? Like if someone's trying to get into the Sephiron, where do they start?
So this was interesting for me because I had to present the Space Marine Codex, and actually, I don't know if you saw any of it when we did Warhammer Live. I was the first person in the world to be talking through Warhammer 40,000 in a competitive sense. So I would be reading the indexes the night before, and then I'd be writing all my show notes, and then I'd come live to the air and we'd play some games, and then I'd have to talk about it to kind of talk to the audience,
That was a great time period, by the way, because the people playing would sometimes do some things and you'd be like, well, I guess that's the way it's going to happen right now. But when you get your book.
Yes, exactly. Yes, there was some, not exactly. It didn't exactly
all good, though. Great entertainment. Loved it.
Yes. Which is a little frustrating for me because it would have been nice to have had some very good players playing the armies as well. But what I do is I look at and because basically the Age of Sigmar and 40k are the same, there are differences, but they're the same. So if you're all listening and get really upset by that, I'm very sorry, but it's true. I think I've played 40k for 3 years now because I played Age of Sigmar. There's some differences. I remember the first time someone charged my artillery piece and I couldn't shoot, and I was like, "What the hell?" You adapt to that quite quickly.
Oh, that's the way it is in Sigmar. You can't.
No, you can. In Sigmar, you can just. Okay. I can be in combat and shoot into combat, out of combat, all of it.
Got it. Okay, got it. Yep.
Though I actually prefer the 40k method. I love the you can't shoot characters method. I think there's some huge problems with the strength and toughness thing, but I can get to that later. But effectively what I do is if I look at an army, Age Sigmar or 40k, and you have to look at what bonuses they're given at the start, right? Disgustingly resilience for Death Guard, as that's our example. You have to start to go, okay, well that's a big bonus that they've got there. Maybe it's pointed too harshly, maybe it's not, but that 5-up ignore wounds, I need to take advantage of that as much as possible. So taking a bunch of vehicles that can't really benefit from it, That's interesting. It's only later on when you start to get to the stratagems and I can blow a vehicle up on a command point. I go, right, okay, vehicles are back in the mix now.
And to that
let's have a look at that.
With the Plague Hauler or whatever, the demon version of the tank or whatever, I think the Plague Burst Hauler, the disgusting resilient on that, well outweighs its 4+ to hit to me.
Yeah, like the bloat drones, right? Yeah. Like that's why I've got 7, because I'm like 5 up ward, 5 up disgusting resilience, toughness 7. I'm pretty certain. Yeah, 3 up save. I'm like, these things are they're just annoying. Output's not huge, but that's kind of how I feel Nurgle generally works in all systems.
Yeah, they're not going away. They're going to be there the whole game, and so you'll get your value out of them.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just identifying. You kind of go from 2 ways, don't you? You identify the strengths of the army holistically, and then you start to pick units out. Because then I went to the spell lore for Death Guard, or I go to pick another army that I play for Age of Sigmar. Stormcast. Stormcast have the ability to deploy on a 3+, so they deep strike effectively exactly the same as deep strike, you understand, but happens on a 3-up. So you can make some fun, risky armies with that, where you can kind of like semi-alpha strike someone's army, or you can deploy on the tabletop and just run stuff forward. So you start to understand that. I started to pick units that had high mobility after landing, or high survivability when landing, in case I didn't make my 9-inch charge. So you pick like a way that the army plays, and then you pick units to fit into that, is my experience. Or you go the other way and you go, the points on those are way too cheap. I'll just take 900 of those.
No, I think people can figure that out. I think that you can objectively look at a book or an army book or a battle tome or codex or whatever, and you can make those decisions. Like, this seems to have a lot of rules and it's 5 points, so let me get that. But I mean, what we're talking about is that whole picture. Like, where do I get in? What do I look at a battle tome? I like the way that the blood letters look, or whatever. Right. So what do I pick up from this book at the store? And then what is my first unit that I purchase?
Well, I think, with blood letters, more blood letters. And I think...
well, obviously the coolest looking model too, right? You get,
No, well, this is the point. This is literally, we're on the subject of why the Honest Wargamer exists and why we do a unit, and we talk about a unit. If you guys aren't aware, we do a thing called a rundown where we just talk about one thing, we talk about it to its conclusion. And that's because blood letters is a great example. There's loads of formations they can go in. There's loads of units that buff and synergize with them. Then you take into account missions, and then you take into account maneuverability, you take into account other armies, you take in its pros and cons and its strengths and weaknesses, and then that makes the difference between you having 10 blood letters, 120 blood letters, and what am I doing with them? Because there's lots to say. And that's why I mean by a resource, I don't think really the wargaming community necessarily has a resource in that minutia. Someone will go, look, this is what I do when I take 7 Razorbacks and Gulliman, and you're like, cool, yeah.
Yeah, I would have never figured that one out.
But you understand it, right? Okay, I'm like, I get that. But, right, okay, I like Razorbacks, they're the best thing. I love that model the mostest for some reason.
There's been a lot of Razorback enthusiasts over the last couple of editions.
But that's what you like. Actually, which chapter tactic best suits them for the way I want to play is the next question. Not because points, and this is what we've had in Age of Sigmar, and you guys in 40k are going to start to get now, points are going to change on a yearly basis. So you can't rely on that being true all the time. So what you need to do is you need to look at what the thing does, and then have a conversation about what the points are for the thing afterwards. And then, do you want to play the way that thing does the thing?
I like what you're saying there. I do.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
So you look at the functionality, and then the functionality as you wish to use it, and then you see if the points are what you'd like to pay for that functionality. And then, if the points are good or bad, in the next edition, they may either change for the good or change for the worse. And you get to make that decision. But definitely make it for yourself and play with it and learn. That's probably the best way to do it.
I lucked out with my Sylvaneth army because I really liked the way the Kurnoth Hunters looked.
Okay.
So I just wanted to paint some. So I got 2 boxes and painted them up, and then everyone told me how broken they were. Well, they were really point sufficient. Whereas actually, if you just took pure Sylvaneth, you really needed Kurnoth Hunters because you had almost nothing else that did that heavy lifting in the army. Like Tree Lords are just rubbish. Oh, really? Okay.
They just do nothing.
Even the Ancient? Or
No, the Ancient's fantastic. Utterly different.
Is he still good? Because the General's Handbook just came out. I know that did change things. So does the way the General Handbook overlays on the battle tomes, how big of an influence does that have in making some choices? And I want to pick your brain on Sylvanet like nobody's business, because I want to try to play this army, but I thought it was a broader discussion. Okay.
So General's Handbook, wicked, always good, because all the points change, right? Skyfires from the Zenith range still too cheap, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. Someone else listening at home might be like, I disagree. I'm like, that's cool. Let's talk about it till we're blue in the face. Not agree. But then go play some games, right? That's how it works. But 6 new missions, that's really the key element, right? 6 new things to think about with your army before you get to the points effect on your army.
Do you find that these are the ones that translates into organized events like tournaments and stuff? Do they pick heavily from the concepts in the General's Handbook mission book?
Yeah, they only use the 6 from the General's Handbook.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Unless you happen to go to some other event, and they do change it up a little bit. And the statement from Games Workshop is they'd like events to pick from the 6 previous and the 6 now. And the 6 now are effectively just adaptations of the 6 before. But it doesn't matter. Like, you've got 12 scenarios potentially to consider, and then depending on the pack, 6 that you definitely know are going to arrive, or 5. I personally think 6 games is better, but most people, I can understand, only want to play 5 over a weekend. I don't know, do you guys in the US, do you play 5 or 6 games over a weekend?
It depends. There are certain tournaments that have even a larger game format than that. I'm running an event here on November 10th and 11th. It's 5 rounds, but because we want to focus more on the social side of things.
Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's cool, right? So now you start to understand that in Age of Sigmar, for instance, there's a scenario that really benefits characters and monsters. But if you happen to have just bought all infantry and your characters are 5 wounds each, and they can be targeted in Age of Sigmar on like 40k, so they could potentially die quite quickly. So you might just, I'm not saying auto lose, but struggle a lot on that particular scenario.
Pray for some good terrain, is what you...
Exactly, right? So yeah, and that's the first thing that came with General's Handbook was new missions, which is cool. Then there were 14 new allegiance abilities, 17 maybe. I'm picking 14, but I think it might be 17.
14 good ones.
Yeah, no, less than that.
3.5 good ones.
Well, but either way,
2 that should not be named at all, and then 13
unchosen ones. Yeah, but it was so that's amazing, and that opened up. That made my Seraphon, my beloved Seraphon, go from like medium, especially because almost no one knows how to play against them because they've not really been played for a long time, to absolutely stonkingly good. So that's amazing. So yeah, Seraphon, you can see a big rise in Seraphon being used. But then they had the huge change in the dynamic of hordes, where if you took a max unit, so let's say you could take a unit of 30 blood letters, yeah. So there are 100 points, I think they finally came out as, per 10. If you take a full unit of 30, it's 270 points for the 30, as opposed to 300 points.
Oh, okay, so you a little bit of a break. I got it.
Yeah, but if you took him in 3 10s, you'd have to pay 300 points. So there's bonuses for taking large blocks. So then the question became, as soon as everyone heard that, they're like, oh my God, it's the Horde meta. It's a year of the Horde. This is all that it's about. But actually, functionally, there's a lot of really good units that deal with whole blocks of men really well. So as long as people keep that balance in their list design, it'll equal out. And I don't really think it's the Horde meta at all, because it's just the movement meta, because it's a turn 1 game. And I think you've got the same in 40k. I'm pretty certain. I keep abreast, and I play quite a bit of 40k. So I
want to hear this theory. I'll let you know what's going on.
Okay, so effectively, as far as I'm aware, the game designers want you to engage in the first turn. They want both players straight away.
That does seem right. Yep.
Yep. They want both players to be rolling dice in the first turn and enjoy themselves. You're like, straight away, no more maneuvering, no more tactics.
I won't go quite that far, but okay, I think that the fact that can exist is its own tactic, and you have to play to it or against it.
Yeah, but that's the pre-game phase, right? Yeah. And possibly the deployment phase. But in Age of Sigmar, a lot of the armies that you see do very, very well are always heavy movement or movement breaking armies that just have the capacity to just mess about.
And that's correct. That's the way it is right now.
That's the way it is right now.
So if you're choosing units, you might want to look at things that have possibly a movement advantage that you might have just kind of overlooked on your initial read through.
Yes, absolutely. Sylvaneth, a really good example, right? So they can pop up using the roots, the realm roots, or whatever they're called. So that's huge in their capacity to do it. Stormcast have the ability to drop down on a 3-up. You've got, we did have flying units, but like if you look at all armies that have done very well over the past like couple of years, movement's been that kind of key factor that's really threatened people. But then if you're good at the game and you played it a lot, you start to learn to put units in your army that can stop that. The bubble wrap is a term I know we all know, but you got chaff walls or just the micromanagement of those units. So movement's the key element, in my opinion, for the game, especially in an objective-based game.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting that 40k missions don't have fixed deployment for objectives. I don't like that personally.
I don't either. In the missions that I create, in most cases, I believe that the objectives should be fixed because I think it's, and my personal opinion on this is that it's a way for a sharper gamer to kind of get an advantage over what might be a more casual gamer, which can create a feel bad experience in your tournament.
Yes. I completely agree. So hopefully we'll see that change. But yeah, movement is my key factor for Age of Sigmar. I think that's just the key element. Movement and mortal wounds. There you go. That's the only thing that matters.
Well, and the General Handbook brought about allies too. Is there a way? Yes. Is there a way to kind of continue to chug along with the army that you like, and not you, an army that one likes? And then if you find yourself struggling in another way, to bring in some units from another faction that may help you win more games, but still not violating the core of what you're playing the game for.
Yeah, there's definitely some first among equals, and that's true for allies as well. So there are just like some, not auto includes, but there are some really strong choices. But they do have different factions are only able to ally with other certain factions.
Is that from the various alliances, the grand alliances?
So that's from the General's Handbook. So most Skaven can ally with Skaven, of their other clans, for example, but they can't ally with other stuff. So, but that's in the General's
green
Handbook.
Ones with the blue ones, and that's cool. But you couldn't put them with Sylvaneth or
Sylvaneth's a great example. They can only ally with Stormcast and Wanderers, and the
Wanderers are the old Wood Elves, right?
Yes, yeah, very good. Eternal Guard are very good at the minute, I think. Anyway, so they can only do that. So if you're looking for allies to put them in, those are the ways to do it. But Sylvaneth again, very unique in their capacity to have other units with battalions and formations, which is super cool.
Do you think that was a good change for the game to allow this kind of cross pollination of armies?
Yeah, especially for like people who like kitbashing and putting armies together and just like modeling stuff and going, okay, I've got Disciples of Tzeentch Force and I'd like to add this or that in, or a monster that's not particularly Tzeentchy, but I can now turn it into a more Tzeentchy looking model. I think that's cool. I think that's really functional. I hadn't even
thought about that. I actually have a group on Facebook. It's called the Kitbash Crew, where it's just devoted to kitbashing, not conversions. We're not that advanced, just kitbashing.
Yeah, get me into that. That's my shtick. Basically, I have Tree Lord Ancients coming out. I think I've got 14 at the minute, and they are everything other than a Tree Lord. They're like, I've got like 4 carrying rocket launchers. I've got 3 carrying Celestial Hurricanums. I've got 3 more carrying Luminarchs of Heesh. So they're all, one's riding a Carnosaur. And then so I can have a Sylvaneth army with something else in, but it looks all the same. So that's cool that happens. We haven't actually seen many tournaments yet using allies. So Blood and Glory this weekend. We should hopefully see that. But it takes time to build armies. So it's interesting to see if people want to put stuff in. But there's definitely some strong units that just work very well on their own, like an Imperial Knight, although I think they're overcosted. But ignoring that, an Imperial Knight is something. It could be a bully.
It could win a game for you if you're taking I'm using air quotes here, a weaker army. You might include a knight to give a target for your opponent to shoot at, so your other stuff can kind of dirtle around or whatever.
Exactly. So it's kind of like that. Some units just stand alone can plug into an army if they're allowed to, which is great. And then some maybe take a little bit more thought. Celestial Hurricanum from Order, as an example, has got an aura that is +1 to hit to everything within, I think, 12 inches, to all units within 12 inches.
Friend or foe or whatever, or is it?
No,
or is it
just friend.
Oh, just friend.
Friend.
Okay, so but it's any faction.
To order, so it's any faction. So it's order keyword. So it's just absolutely everything. So you could take Darkling Coven's executioners, which are the old Dark Elf executioners, and instead of doing 2 mortal wounds on a roll of a 6, they can now do it on a 5, which is cool. And then they could take a bit of damn terrain. They could be doing it on 4s. They've got 2 attacks each. So effectively, each executioner is now doing 2 mortal wounds a go.
That sounds good. That sounds like it's a good thing.
Okay, so there's ways to incorporate stuff in if you want to, but it does take a little bit more thought and requires more. You have to have your book with the unit that you like, and then you have to read through everything else in the order. Not easy. It's easier to do death because there's like 8. So
I got you. Yeah, a buddy of mine brought over some flesh eater courts. He's like, I want to bring these in with my Skaven, and the new thing lets me do this. Can it? Can you bring in?
Flesh eater courts and Skaven? No.
Okay.
Not in match play.
I misunderstood. I don't speak the language yet, so thanks for
not in match
walking
play.
through
No,
this.
not at all. No. And the battle tomes are getting more complex as well, which good or bad. It's exciting for me because. And someone like yourself, you'd be able to pick it up and you go, okay, there's more in here now for me to chew on. Whereas some of the earlier battle tomes are just that. But all of the armies synergize very well together. So that's cool. Some even more so. Some are very synergistic armies and some are very standalone strong armies. So a really good example would be a Khorne, especially the old Bloodbound or Skaven Pestilence, were just super strong in like when they would work as a kind of cohesive unit.
Mm-hmm. In the formations and stuff, are they still
in the formations, or even just with a couple of characters nearby? Like a plague furnace would do really well with a bunch of plague monks and a couple of plague priests, and you didn't have to have anything else like a different spell lore or items or anything. They just kind of functionally, or all the war scrolls just gave all the extra overlapping abilities to each other that if you did it right and you kept them all within 6 inches, or you rolled a 3 up for your prayer, you started to build really strong armies just from having the right units in your army. And that was what was really cool, because all the armies look narratively more in check.
And you think that's present across all the armies now?
More than it's ever been.
Okay.
But there's still some that need some love. But, they'll get there, I'm sure of it.
That's pretty cool. Can we take a quick break and then come back?
Sure.
All right, man. Let's take a quick break. Come right back to it.
Frontline Gaming is excited to announce that tickets are now on sale for the LVO 2018. Taking place January 26th through the 28th at Bally's Casino in Las Vegas, the event will feature gaming, seminars, and social events. Don't wait, get your tickets at lasvegasopen.net today.
Hey everybody, we are back. I'm still Paul. I got Rob here from Honest Wargamer.
Hi everyone. Okay,
now tell me how to win with Sylvaneth.
So, this is the thing. You go buy your General's Handbook 2017 or borrow friends, whatever you want to do. Find the pages, go into it, and then start to look at the differences from 2016. The first thing you'll see is Spite Revenants have become battle line, which I think almost nobody has seen. Because people, they buzzword, right? Mm-hmm. So when Chapter Approved comes out, and let's say the points for things go up or down, I don't know, I'm just guessing, and Gulliman becomes 900 points or 100 points,
He's a million points.
Yeah, but that's the first thing, right? People are going to crack it open. They'll be like, how many points is Gulliman, right? First question, maybe. Or whatever unit that you really love. But what slips through the cracks is the units that you already didn't consider to be good. Sylvaneth, Spite Revenants, a battle line now. You have to have 3 battle line units when you're playing Age of Sigmar in match play in 2,000 points. And you previously could have Dryads or Tree Revenants, but now you can also have Spite Revenants. Spite Revenants are pretty rubbish. They basically do nothing. And by that, I mean their functionality means they pretty much do nothing. You could have they could be, I think they're 100 points for 5. You could have them at 50 points for 5. I still think people wouldn't take large blocks of them. You could have them probably for maybe if they were 20 points for 5, but they don't do much, is my point. Right? Mm-hmm. But you can have them as battle line now, and you can take them in the Dreadwood Wargrove. The Dreadwood Wargrove is like a battalion that requires you to have a certain amount of certain units, specifically Spite Revenants. So your Spite Revenants now become your tax, if you will, and you can kind of build armies 2 ways. You either focus on your battle line units and you make them really strong, like Bloodletters or Arcanauts, and they're great, or Dryads in this case, for Sylvaneth, or you can have them as attacks, and then you can add your battalion tax on top. But what's really strong with this is you can take 4 units of, I think it's 4 units, it's just me riffing off the top of my head.
Yep.
Spy Revenants, and the tax will come in at like 400 points for the battalion, and the maybe 500 points, might be 6. So there's a wide berth there for me. Good luck. And,
could be 9, could be 800, somewhere.
But what they allow you to do is roll a dice at the start of the game, and it gives you up to 3 bonuses. You get to pick one of the 3. So you roll a d3, and if you roll a 1, you can pick one of the 3. If you roll a 3, you can have all 3. And the 2 that really stand out for me are, one of them is your army can't be affected by spells or abilities beyond 12 inches on the first turn, which is good.
Oh, that's good. I mean, that could be potentially backbreaking to your opponent. Right?
And then the other one that really stands out to me is you can teleport a unit at the start of the first battle round, and they could be 6 inches away from the enemy, and it won't count. And because it happens before the game turn starts, you and me, let's say we were playing Paul, we would then choose, Attack of the Dogs. We would then choose who goes first, and then I could either take advantage or not take advantage of that. Because the Dreadwood Wargrove is a single drop, which means I could include my entire army in one deployment.
Okay, so you could opt to not put them that close to the opponent because you're not going first.
Well, because I would choose.
Okay.
Because if in this, in Age of Sigmar, whoever finishes deploying first, choose who goes is first.
Aha. Okay, I got you.
Choose who goes first. So that would mean I deploy my entire army, and then I go, okay, you've deployed really well and functionally, so I can't alpha strike you with this unit of Kurnoth Hunters with scythes that I've got, or this Durthu, or whatever else, or this huge unit of Dryads that I intend to snare your army with. So I won't move something, and I'll deploy it on an objective, and then now you have to, there's an objective that's in cover, and I can deploy my Kurnoth Hunters in cover on the first turn, or my Dryads in cover on the first turn, and you have to go and clear them before you can even score the objective.
That's deep.
Super functional.
Yeah. So what you've done is you based all of that off of a unit that people necessarily weren't taking before. But this how it worked into
just looking that there's a change. So really, you got to ask, you pick a unit and you go, how would I use this to the best of its ability? Go through the process. When you get to the end of that process, you go, that sucks. Just go, I've had a great time exploring that option, and then I come back.
But dude, that's part of it, man. I'm telling you, you need to spend hours with your Codex and our army book and go through all this stuff.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that is a sneaky win that no one's currently seen yet. And again, just the fact that I can, and don't forget on the first turn, you can move a unit. So now I've just got a 3-inch charge with the most combat-y army I could find if I wanted to. And they've still got loads of other abilities and little things that are going on.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's pretty cool. I'm going to take that. I'm going to build some Spite Revenants this weekend.
Yeah, you need to build 20, so 4 units of 5. And
4 units of, I don't know if I don't know if I got that many yet. I'm going to start with 10 or whatever I have over there.
Okay.
But when I started painting this army, I was getting it ready. I was actually getting it ready to bring to Warhammer World.
Oh, awesome.
And then 8th edition happened, and so I brought Blood Angels.
Okay, all right.
But I wanted it to be like this. Like, I wanted to put all my painting skills, everything I've learned. I do this hobby segment on my show called The Finishing Moves, to where we talk about in every episode, or at least in most episodes, we talk about 10 extra minutes you could spend on your models to make them look that much. When you think you're finished, you think you're done, here's 10 more minutes you could spend on your army that's really going to separate you from the normal hobbyist. I mean, you're not going to be a pro painter, of course, but these are things you can do. And I used all these techniques on these miniatures that I was building, and I think they turned out really well. And the Sylvaneth army lends itself to these extra little techniques. That's where I was going with that. So that's what I was doing.
That sounds brilliant.
So the Spite Revenants are those ones that are like half tree, half spirit, and you get to use multiple different painting techniques on it. And I think this will be a really good hobby thing.
Yeah, very much so. And what's really cool is I've never seen a unit of them ever on the board. Ever. So people will go, what is that? And you go, these are Spite Revenants. And they'll go, what? And that's really cool.
That
you
is
can
good
enjoy
to-
that experience.
Yes, I will do that. So I'll learn all the rules, hopefully, and make this happen. But I was taking that one formation they get, and I had to take the 5 tree spirit things, and then the 6 or the 3 Kornoth hunters or 6 Kornoth hunters, and I have a tree lord agent. It's kind of like a hodgepodge of stuff.
Oh, so the household, I think it's called. So the Gnarlroot Wargrove was the first thing that everyone kind of went with Sylvaneth, and that's my point. You tend to get. And the point of my show, you tend to get a lot of people who everyone considers to be good at the game, or just, people who do podcasts or battle reports or something. And, they go, well, this is the thing that stands out to me. And the thing is I might have just been blowing Spy Revenants, and the Dreadwood Wargrove might potentially totally suck. Yeah. But in my opinion, it doesn't, right? I've explained to you all the functionality of what it can do, and I'm like, these are my thoughts, Paul. Like, give it a go. Let's see how it works.
There are a whole podcast out there about exactly what you're talking about the theory of what you're talking about right now. About, are you just really good at using this stuff, and you're telling me what is your witchcraft? Whatever, that I'm never going to get, the secret sauce that I'll never get. But I don't think that's what we just went through.
No, it's not. I think you can talk things through in more detail and then come up with a smarter plan at the end of it. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is you can do that yourself. And it was only actually doing one of my rundown videos where I really learned about how functional I think Spy Revenants can be. So just go and. I think that my general point is go and take your battle tome or your codex and just read it into detail, or just read something you think's cool for you. Just go, that sounds amazing.
And that is what you're doing on the Honest Wargamer, though. I mean, I know that you have it's a lengthier show than mine, but you do have a section to where you just beat a single page to death.
Yeah, because I think, this is my personal thoughts, I think that's what, as a community, we need. And what you need is someone who doesn't have, I don't have an axe to grind, right? I love Warhammer, end of conversation. And basically all of it. You know, there are things I love killing, absolutely, yeah. And Mechanicum are the coolest 40k faction, right? But
I'm just going to let you have that one. I'm just going to let you.
That's fine. Yeah.
I'm going to let you have
it. That's my feelings, but I'm not going to go out there and say that they're the best in the game, because that's not true. What I am going to do is just go through it, because what I really want the end user to do, because we started off this entire talk with, you go into a shop and you want to buy something, or you want to start an army and you buy a box of something that you like the look of. Where do you go from there? There's a gap there that people don't have. And also, most importantly, you've got a bunch of gaps where the information in there is really ropey, and I don't think that's fair to people. It's not financially fair. I'll give you a really good example. I played a huge game with my Imperial Knights yesterday, because I want to do some rundowns on the Imperial Knights, just all of them. I
saw your picture on Twitter. It was like 30 knights.
Yeah, so I've got one of every type of Imperial Knight that exists, and 2 or 3 of some of them. And I think, if we're saying out loud, I think that for their points cost in match play 40k, they suck. So I just wanted to know functionally if that.
Well, you are a tournament gamer. You can. These opinions are fine. I don't think that your desire to really get granular with units is in contradiction to what you have to do to win tournaments either. I don't think those are in contradiction. I think there's 2 different paths there, and you can do them both.
No, exactly. But that's why I like getting people on to talk about, you're asking about Age of Sigmar, because you're like, well, you might know something, and I'm like, well, I think I know some stuff, yeah. But I wanted to see how they worked and what they were like, really. Like, what was I've seen it on paper, and I played with them a few times, so it was just give it another bash and see how I feel. But I am very upset that I own a Knight Acheron. I'm not upset that it looks great. I think it looks awesome, right? It looks just lovely. And I've got 3, so I'm not unhappy about that either. It looks amazing. But there were plenty
of points you could have had regret along this path, and you still went forward.
Yeah, but what I really do regret is that those models that I think are awesome and cool, really, I can't even justify I'm going to give it a good bash at a tournament sort of unit. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does. Yeah.
You know, they are at the end of pretty unmanageable. I was like, okay, so they auto hit. So flyers, that's where that's going to be, right? You know, I'm shooting down flyers while I'm smashing through tanks
with your flamethrower. Yeah.
With my flamethrower, because it auto hits, but it's 2d6, and I can't really change the fact that it's 2d6. I've got a command point reroll maybe. And then it's 3 damage. It's got AP2. So I'm like, okay, I feel like I can do some stuff, but I'm not gonna kill a flyer, and then the flyer's gonna run away, and then I'm gonna be like, okay, you're somewhere else now. That's a bit challenging, and now this guy's in the middle of the board, and
you've got a heavy stubber or something to rely on.
Yeah, I'm just like, what does this do? And it just made me sad, and that's what I really wanted to approach, because we all talk about wargaming all the time, you know, and then you say something really cool and you go, yes, I'm going to go buy that thing, or I own that thing and I really want to know how to use it. And sometimes the answer is that if you want to use it in a competitive sense, then it won't be great. But where it gets real bad, where you get the feel sads, is if you don't know that before you go in.
Yeah.
Like my
You're expecting it. You're expecting this to work out in a way that just really isn't realistic. And then that's proven to you after you've bought the figure, put it together, spent hours painting it, driving or flying to a tournament. And this happens in round 1.
Yes, exactly. GC LeCourts are a great example. I've got them in a box. I love the models, like 70s sci-fi, sort of 80s sci-fi future art. I'm like,
those bits work for everything, man. I mean, those bits can be everywhere.
I love them. I absolutely love them. I think they're brilliant. And if someone out there can give me a list that's better than what I've been trying to put together, that isn't just take Gene Sealers, that's a Tyranid army, or just take Lehman Russes, or you know, infantry, which is just a guard army that's actually a Gene Sealer cult army, then let me know. But I think that it sucks. And I spent 2 weeks playing everyone with the most competitive. I was like, bring your hardest list, bring it. I'd play 2 or 3 games a day, and I'd like turn 1, I'd just be like, okay, shake hands. That's going nowhere. Let's start again. Let's re-rack. And I just couldn't do it. Just couldn't make it work. Not even close. And, you know, it's like 400-500 quid's worth of models where I'm like, what? Yeah. Why have I got this?
What am I doing?
Like, and I get it. Like,
you can use them in Necromunda soon.
Yeah, yeah. And someone's like, you know, oh, why don't you just paint them? And I'm like, because I like playing. I like the concept of them on the tabletop. Yeah. I love the idea that they're there and they're appearing, and that's why I love that, and I love how they look, and I want to play that. And I want to play at tournaments, and I'm not saying I don't want to like win every GT. Like, I'm happy to lose.
You don't want to embarrass yourself either, you know.
Right? Yeah.
Like, oh man, I heard you were good at this game, Rob. What's going on?
Well, no, I also don't care about that, because that's actually.
I mean, I'm being sarcastic, of course.
Well, actually, you've touched on a bit of a personal point, if you don't mind me talking about this real quick. So when I was doing Warhammer Live, and now that I've set up, like I'm at the Honest Wargamer, there's this pressure that you feel to be good, right? Mm-hmm. For other people to think, okay, they're good at the game. They've won this tournament, and they've won this tournament. And they've done that, right? And it really got to me and affected my Warhammering generally, because I was like,
you're playing to a certain way. Maybe you're not taking advantage of something rules wise, legally. I'm talking about, you know, all on the table. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, because I also think I'm like a pretty good sport, and I'll play pretty fair and straight up and down. I always give my opponent 6 dice for rerolls at the start of a game. No matter the situation, I just go, you can just use those for anything. Don't worry about it. Because I think the maths is that it generally just works out. But, you know, if you've got like something that works on a 2-up, and you want to re-roll it, you know, you roll a 1 and you want to re-roll it, fine, you know, like, because otherwise it just makes my opponent feel bad. You know, that I lost that game because my dude didn't roll a 2 on this thing. I think
there's a market out there for a support group to people that re-roll 1s to other 1s.
No, well, actually, do you know what's really weird? When I give people the re-rolls, right? Yeah. And then they use it and it turns into the same dice roll. They are so serene about that conclusion.
Dude, I'm telling you, like command point depression is real. Like, there's going to be like support groups out there for each other.
Well, that's different in 40k because people rely on that, right? They say, I'm going to do take a thing but I can re-roll it if I really need it. Whereas I suppose with Sigmar it doesn't really exist. So when I give people re-rolls, but I do it in 40k as well, I give people the dice and they just got something. It just makes them feel a little bit nicer when they suck. So that's fine.
I waylaid the conversation. I apologize for
No, but so my point is I went to a tournament recently and I was playing a pretty weird list of Night Heralders, which just blow up scenery and they do this kind of weird thing. And I'd just gone for 6, and it's kind of like a control zone army. It's all in my own head, and I was just like, let's see what this does. Like, you know, I want to try and zonally control a tabletop using just exploding pieces of scenery. And I did really well. And the only thing I lost to was Kharadron Overlords, which is very, 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 very strong at the minute. Way too strong. And this is before they had their FAQ recently, which changed all of their stats. And it was a command point. It was the reroll that I'd given away to one of the guys that just let him kind of, do an extra wound, which took a unit off, which caused me to lose the game. But I wasn't upset by that. And I was really happy that I wasn't trying to win as hard as my opponent was trying to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind if everyone goes, you didn't win that tournament. And I'm like, I don't mind. That's fine with me. But do you feel that pressure when you play at tournaments?
I do, because I feel like you got to keep the street cred. But it's a phantom thing. It's not real. I mean, because we play a dice game, like it's okay to lose this game. And it will happen. And no matter your best efforts will not make you win every tournament. But you're spending, I believe in the social contract. You're spending 2 or 3 hours with another individual, both trying to have a good time.
Yes. And I think the idea as well of going to a tournament with a list that I know is really points efficient and effective, just because that's the only reason I'm taking it, is definitely true if I want to win, and I do want to win, but especially people that play at your level in 40k or other people's level at 40k.
Well, how I reconcile it is, how I reconcile this whole concept is that I know that things like shows like this influence what people purchase.
Yes,
and it's just, and how many, again, that whole chain of accountability to yourself or whatever, the purchase, the hours of hobby time, the play, the travel, or whatever. So I try to give good advice here, But I tried to separate my performance at the tournaments from trying to always give real sound advice. And if I don't, I preface it with, this is just my opinion. It's a flavor choice. It is what it is. But I don't let that influence my game anymore on the tournament.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good, because I think the concept of going away for a weekend, seeing all the people and then deploying an army that you don't really like, but you've taken it because it's the best one. It just feels absolutely abhorrent to me. Yeah, like conceptually, I'm like, I want to enjoy what I'm doing. And not that everyone that does that's bad, or sometimes it just lines up. Like in 3rd edition, it lines up, right? I'm a huge Blood Angel fan, and so in 3rd edition they happened to have been absolutely awesome. And in 4th edition, they were good too, so playing, sometimes it just lines up to where you will be a diehard fan of the best thing out there, and that's okay too. So I'll give you a good example, right, of this in reverse that I didn't enjoy. So last year, so there's this thing in the UK where people at tournaments, they get points. It's a bit like the ITC, and then there's kind of an invitational where people playing Age of Sigmar can go, called the Masters, and it's people that have all done very well at the tournament, and then someone eventually ends up doing it. So there's a guy called Russ, and he had taken lots of different armies over the course of the year, and he turned up to the event with Tomb Kings, and just won. Now everyone considers Russ to be a very, very good player. And I've seen him use armies really well. And it really upset me that he won with Tomb Kings, because everybody knew that they were just bent beyond all belief, that they were just so cheap that it was ridiculous. It was a joke. They were a joke army, and they were just so cheap, right? Because then I'm like, quite rightly, you could say, well, see, there's no shame in that, though. He's coming to the Masters tournament. No, there's no shame. There's no shame, but it absolutely cheapens it. It cheapens it because he's a competent player. He's not like a scrub he's not just like some kid who's like, this is my first tournament, and oh, lo and behold, I've just won. Yeah. Because we can talk about list versus the player, right? Someone can bring a really, really efficient list, but they're a rubbish player, so they just do rubbish with it, right? We've all experienced that. Yep. Right. But if you're a good player, you should be challenging yourself. What do you gain from bringing a really, really like absolutely just awful list to play against, to play with.
Well, I mean, let's be fair though, and if I can, and also bring us back around, this is part of what you're doing with your show, with doing really exploring the nooks and crannies, as it were, of data sheets, of battle scrolls and stuff, because not everyone they have aspirations of being that. They have aspirations of being that guy who just sees the matrix and can read it and know what's going to happen 5 moves in advance or whatever. But I mean, let's just say, even if you are a guy that can do that, you're probably more concerned with like work and getting your yard looking nice, or, taking the kids somewhere. But stuff like this and stuff like you're doing, is it going to enable people?
Well, yes.
To do that?
I hope that what I'm doing that's my intent. My intent is to enable people. But that's my point, right? Like, I wouldn't go to a tournament now with just the power picks. I'd go with my left field army and really just try to like blow people's minds and then play well with it, do really, really well with my army. And people just be like, what was that? Like, what did you do? And I'm like, cool, let's talk about this, right?
What is a sprite or whatever?
Sprite revenant. You wait till people find out what Croxagore are. I'll be like, it does this. Just roll some dice and I might take all your models off. They'll be like, what? I'm like, it's like 1 in 916 or something. But the idea is that if you're a really, really competent player, or you consider yourself to be a really competent player, like, wouldn't it be exciting if you were winning because you were winning and not because your list was winning? Like, people who are good at Warhammer already know that they know what a good list is. They don't need me to tell them, and they probably don't need you to tell them.
Well, that's the way it was in 7th. You're exactly right. And that's the way it was in 7th, is like, you just had to play that to even stand a chance, really. But I've played more casual games of 8th with the stuff like you're talking about, a Gene Stealer cult, some weird chaos brew or whatever, just more casual games in the last 3 or 4 months than I did in the last 2 years of 7th edition.
Yeah, and how was it?
I mean, I love them. I mean, I've enjoyed every single one of them. Win or lose. I don't let people track records here in my hobby area. So right. you can beat me here in the gaming area, and you don't get to talk about it.
Oh, right. Okay. Is that keeping up the street cred, right?
Right. But if I beat them either, I don't put it in their face, because I let this be a safe environment for people to bring whatever army they want to try to do that, to create those kind of winning situations out of what would be a traditionally, and I say traditional in the last Synth Ace edition, an on paper winning list.
Yeah. I can completely understand that. I love it. I absolutely love playing games. They're just the dice rolls are just so much fun. And the idea that I can win before I even start rolling dice, I'm just like, why would I be there? Like, no idea. I just don't want to be. I want to go there. I want it to be down to the wire. And sometimes, and if you're really good, so I played at a narrative event at the weekend, which the guys are trying really hard to get off the ground, this concept that there are narrative events and there are competitive events, and it was a wicked time, but being competent at the game, and many of the other people who I played, I would say, weren't as competent, which is absolutely okay, allowed me to control the game so that we could tell better stories.
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying.
And that was really fun for me. Like, all that, all the competency just meant that the pressure was off in not attempting to like win. It was just like, okay, so you could, if you're very good and very competent, especially with an army that you like, you can start to control the game to just do the fun stuff that you enjoy.
I love that stuff to happen during the course of the game. I don't like it happening in terrain setup or deployment zone choosing or objective placement. That's kind of what we were talking about before. I like that stuff to be fixed. So it's stuff that the average gamer doesn't have to worry about. He can just know his army, and he can just play a great game. He's not getting outfoxed before the dice start getting rolled.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. It's fun though. And realistically, no matter what happens with, have you got a general wrap up of where you think 40k is now? I'd love to hear it.
Oh, I mean, right now, like in the current state of things, I think that we're on like a path to where things are evolving. Like the FAQs and we in our vernacular as gamers, what it really is an errata. But we've come to just call it FAQ, like we call the metas, it's something different. We have terms, they mean something different for us. But the FAQs coming out are making it an unstable environment for that whole chain of like purchase decision, hobby time to playing the game. So I think right now things are a little volatile. I think at the end of this year, they will not be volatile. That's my opinion. Things will be a lot more settled down. So, but even with that in mind, I think this is one of the best times to have ever been in 40K because things happen on the table. You can take these kind of fringe unit decisions and still change the table state from turn to turn and do things. And with dynamic missions and stuff, you can have an enjoyable game, even with suboptimal choices, which I think is an amazing time.
That's great. That's good. That's very good.
How off is that? I mean, where am I wrong there? Opinion.
No, I don't think you are at all. I agree with you that because I talk about this thing called the production meta, where let's say there was a new release this weekend of a bunch of new models, or let's take Death Guard as an example. You've got a bunch of people buying the armies, building them, painting them. They've got jobs, they've got families, they've got kids, they've got other hobbies, whatever it might be. You'll see a really serious gamer who really wants to get on the tabletop, maybe put them out in a week or two, and maybe there'll be a tournament then. And then you go, wow, Death Guard did really well at this tournament because this guy, so Death Guard are the new thing. But then actually there might not be, and some of those big gamers or some of those people that just get stuff done fast might not get them done in a couple of weeks, or there might not be a big tournament that in that kind of time period. It might have to, 5 or 6 months before those armies are built and played with, and then there's a big tournament, and then someone wins with them. But then at that point, maybe there's new missions, or there's a new errata or something, and everyone puts it down to that. And it's like, is it the production time? Is it the mission change? Is it what's the situation, right? Yeah, and I think that's fascinating, and I talk about this all the time. So I really don't think that the meta is really a thing. I think hordes definitely exist in 40k. That's a fact.
I actually like playing horde. I like playing with zombies, and I have for long. Nurgle's my thing. One of my things. I should say not my thing. One of my things. I love it. But you can't deny that sometimes it's just a mathematical advantage you have over your opponent.
Oh, no, I completely agree with that statement. I just think that there are some very assumed pieces of information. Okay. I listened to some 40k thing the other day because I watch a lot of what a lot of people say while I'm writing up my own stuff and doing things. One of the things I saw was it was a statement. It was something along the lines of, we saw in the early days of 40k when Storm Ravens were really good and they were all the meta. And I was like, do you mean that one tournament?
that 1 week?
I was like,
it's not a wrong statement. It's not.
It is a wrong statement because it's specifically at that one event at that one place which the whole world took as their pool of data. It's just too. Who knows? Do we genuinely know or not know whether or not there's 300 people in it? I don't know. I don't know, in Sri Lanka who just absolutely love 40k and they play it to death in some sort of weird monastery, and that's all they do. This is not true, but it might be true. Yeah,
this is happening right now.
Yeah,
I hope they're subscribers.
Let's say, the early days of 40k with the Storm Ravens, they were like, what are you talking about? It was all, they will have a different opinion. And that's my point. I think sometimes there's just a lot of hot air spoken. Yeah. I
do see your point. Yeah. It's just opinion.
Go, and it's not because I'm trying to argue something down. Some stuff's just broke, or some stuff's just too cheap, right? You really let the cat out the bag when you allow something to reroll everything to hit and everything to wound. It's where are you going from there? What's your what are you adding to your rule set?
And not be targeted by enemy shooting.
And can come back to life. Where are you going with the game system after that exists? How am I going to wow anybody after that? Okay. Right. So, and I'm with everyone on that statement. Okay.
I'm not going to attempt to refute that. I'm not.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that I think that there's so much unexplored that just go and do that, especially if you love the unexplored, or if you love something that, maybe I'm just too hipster for myself and I just don't want to play with the thing everyone else wants to play with.
You can play. You could beat that with what I'm going to say chafe. You could take something, you could take an army of Nurglings, and there's a conceivable outcome where you beat that.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. I mean, it's remote, but in the time it happens, that's going to be a day. It's going to be a good day.
Well, this is my point, right? Like, who's going to remember when you win with the really good army? And then who's going to remember? And this comes, I suppose, maybe this is just something I've learned from my personal experiences. So I won 2 years ago or something. This is my plug. So my friend Dan I owe him £5 every time I talk about this on air. So I won the South Coast GT, which at the time was the biggest Age of Sigmar tournament in the world. It was like 160 people. I think it's still one of the biggest ever. And at that time, everyone thought the Destruction army was utterly trash. Destruction faction. So much so, in fact, that they got bonus. You're allowed more points to take them.
Oh wow! And this is like the orcs and stuff, right?
Yeah. So all of the Destruction. Yeah. So the whole faction. If you pick anything that wasn't Death, Order, or Chaos, you pick Destruction. You just automatically were allowed to deploy more points.
That sounds good.
Right. Yeah. So there were all of the competitive podcasts, all of the shows, all of the big talk. This was the big first tournament ever. Well, not the big first tournament ever. That's not true, but it was like the biggest one to date. Right?
160 people is a big deal. I mean, that's
and everyone's all jazzed up and excited. And then I walk in with an army of stuff that and no one thinks is particularly good. And then I have 6 games where it's just a laugh. And that's where I learned to give people rerolls because it was a guy's birthday. So I gave him a bunch of rerolls. And I was just like, it's your birthday, have some rerolls. And I was already on table 5 at this point on the second day. And then I just win. And I played my heart out. Got some good dice, played some great people. But everyone was just like, how did you do it? And I was like, well, just my units are quite good. You just all think they're rubbish. It's that easy.
Well, that perspective is something I think people are going to enjoy hearing about. So what's your release schedule for the Honest Wargamer?
So we're actually in a really interesting phase where what I get to do, because I work for myself, is just work towards where I want it to be. Because while I'm talking about this idea with you, and it's been really nice having this conversation, so thank you, because I've really sold my own show here. So you've been wonderful. And if anyone's not wanted to listen to it, I'm sorry. But there's been lots of stuff where we've had sort of feedback, and the people who I really care about or I really respect their opinion, I'd love to hear anything you've got to say about it, or anyone who's listening. They've given me some feedback, so I'm already evolving what the process is going to be. So we do a rundown of a thing. So let's say we pick I don't know, what do you want to put? Plague Marines, which are a complicated one. It might take an hour to talk that to death. Just talk it to death. But then some people want that, and then some people want me to break that down into something much smaller, like 2 or 3 minutes, so just something that they can digest super quick, because they might want to listen to everything there is to do with Death Guard. So we go through every single one. So I'm already now formatting, doing they're called Rundown. So Rundown is the big show, and then the Rundown Redux is the new version of the show. And then the other thing that someone else was talking to me about, and I think is something that I'm writing up right now, is a holistic overview of every faction for both gaming systems. So just kind of
that's ambitious.
Pros and cons.
I mean,
well, but not a 2-hour show, like a 5-minute piece of information, because the idea is doing it professionally, and this is the whole idea with me going out on my own and trying to support myself through Patreon, and everything's free, by the way, so that's the point. The point is if you think it's worthwhile, you come and go, you're doing a good job, keep it up, is because I don't have any, like I say, an axe to grind or a button to push. I just want to go, right, okay, so this is Genius of the Court, so these are Death Guard, these are what it can do, really quick overview, and these are the units that are good at it, but let's bring that down a cycle. If you want to find out about the units in minutia, you're going to have to start going to the rundowns and listen through those. But it's doing the first weeks of rundowns has really led me to realize, okay, there's actually a lot more kind of cloud-based level, and then much shorter that I need to also produce to help people in their quest for glory.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, just again, it's sometimes just a question of time. You live it. You are living, breathing Sigmar 40k, and not everyone they want to do that, but it's
I'm terrified.
It's not on your level.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's something that everyone actually wants. Because it's something new, right? It's definitely not something that's existed. I don't think it's existed, like, maybe at a professional level, maybe. If I call myself professional, that's a joke. But giving it a whirl, I just think it's something that would really benefit all of us as a community. Because the reason I went to work for Games Workshop and Warhammer Live is because I love Warhammer. And if I can make it so that it's bigger and better, and I think this is one of those ways I can help make it bigger and better. But the release schedule is my dream in the next couple of months. Is I'd like there to be a 40k rundown and an Age of Sigmar rundown every day for people, and then a rundown redux every day. So that's the schedule I'm aiming towards.
I gotcha. So where can people find your next broadcast?
YouTube, Honest Wargame YouTube. There's podcasts. We're on iTunes. They're on SoundCloud. You can go on our Facebook page to keep up with the info. You can go on our Patreon and just do chats there. And so basically everywhere, just the Honest Wargamer, and everything's got a link to everywhere else. It's again, another reason that we have it on multiple platforms is you might like watching the show, but you might also want to listen to a podcast while you're doing some painting or some work. So we just put them all in the different formats, so it's easier for the end user, as opposed to, you have to stick by what we do.
That's great, man. Well, I hope I can have you on again soon to talk about some more Sigmar stuff.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
And then as your process goes along with this endeavor of yours, I want to hear more about it.
Yeah. So you're playing Sylvaneth, right?
I am.
Okay. You let me know how you do. I'm excited.
Not well. I'll say that. Just. But
they're
they look
tough,
good.
aren't they?
They look good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. And if anyone's interested, or anyone thinks that everything I've said is rubbish, I'd love them to message me, because that's the thing I'm not shy about. I'm not going to be
Neither
hiding
is the
Facebook
internet.
posts.
Let me tell you.
No, but I like it. Like,
yeah.
I think that enthusiasm, you don't get like disgruntled behavior because people are like not impartial, sorry, because they're like unimpassioned.
Yeah.
Like,
just passionate about the whole. Yeah,
they're just that's not a word, unimpassioned, is it? Passionate. They're definitely passionate, and so like, get it, do it, like, be vocal. That's my thoughts anyway.
Awesome, man. We'll speak soon.
Paul, you're great. Thanks.
Have a good one.
FTN is brought to you by Bell of Lost Souls. Check out www.bols.org for the best daily hobby articles on the web.
Hey everybody, we are back. I still got everybody here. Chris, you participated in that charity event this past weekend.
That's right. War Games for Warriors was on Saturday. It was a long and grueling weekend, but the event was a smashing success so far as we were concerned. We had a goal to raise $1,000 for Fisher House, and considering it was a local event, and the store can only fit so many people, we thought that was a pretty reasonable goal. We tripled that goal in total donations.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, end of the day, and it was really cool. We had, for the tournament, we had 28 people show up, which is enough for I think we had 29 total actually for an ITC GT. So he said, "All right, we're going to do 5 rounds." So we did 5 rounds in the one day, and the way the sponsor thing worked is the more battle points we earned, the more the per point donation stacked up. So that helped. We had a bunch of armies and starter sets up for auction that sold for well above retail. There was a few bidding wars there that all helped raise some money. I was pleasantly surprised and happy to go 4-1 with the Blood Angels, and ended up at the top table at the very end. Lost out to an extremely creative orc list that involved like 7 weird boys overcharged with like 100 boys around them. They were perilsing left and right, but they were undeniable and doing D6 mortal wounds all over the place. It was the orkiest thing I could ever think of. It was a ton of fun. The atmosphere was fantastic. Everybody was having a good time, and some people were just coming and showing up like just to play regular games and to do the drawings and stuff. But super happy for the success of the event. We made the local news as well.
That's always fun.
Cameras in there. So it was just great, and thanks so much to the organizers, and thanks so much to the listeners of Forge Narrative that sponsored me and helped us reach and exceed our goal. You guys are awesome. I'm just beyond ecstatic. I'd like to do something like this again in the future.
I was tracking your progress, in chat, kept asking how you're doing. I was really impressed with how you were doing, and whatever. Sometimes can't win every game.
Yep. Well, I mean, I think I exceeded most people's expectations for 100% pure Blood Angels army. So even that on its own
you didn't lose every game, so yes.
Sounds like
You
Blood
exceeded
Angel
expectations.
Sounds like
Blood Angels need a nerf.
That's what that is. The guy
That's
you played in
what- that's
round
where that
one.
guy got- yep.
He's the one that got on our page talking about nerf this.
That dude is mad. What did you do, Chris?
Oh, I'll give some thanks out to everyone. Thank you for everyone that has gone and left us a 5-star review in iTunes. Please, that is a completely cost-free way you can support the show, is by leaving us 5-star ratings in iTunes. That is, and thumbs up and stuff on YouTube. That just helps boost the signal. We really appreciate everyone's effort on that side. For my hobby project outside of the terrain and stuff, I was able to get my Sylvaneth. I found a storage. Well, I didn't find it. I finally put together and my storage system for my Sylvaneth because. And we're talking about Tyranid, so these are like big models with like crazy claws, and we're going to talk about the Damasheron here in just a minute, which I know that you guys, some of y'all have a fondness for.
That's Dimakaran for some other people.
It's Dimakaran.
Dimakaran.
Right.
I call it the
We're going to
Dima.
cover all the pronunciations so that nobody's lost,
Mm-hmm.
and
So
so
what
we
we're
don't
gonna
get
do-
messages about it
we're
later.
We're going to
get
get
a
messages
dartboard.
about it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We're going to take a dartboard. We're going to put every possible name up on it. We're going to throw a dart, and that's the name of it. And
what
everybody will
I've been told by the authors of Warhammer is that if you pronounce every single vowel, you're not doing it wrong.
You know what? That's
Interesting.
No. That's no. I
Ricky, you do not get to one up the writers and creators of the game.
Where I was going though with this is that the solution for like branches, like the Sylvaneth have branches all over the place, and I modeled mine like a particularly branchy. and there's just no good foam solution for that.
Did you go Table War?
Table War.
Oh, you're a genius. That's the only case for Sylvaneth.
Table War, I mean, they can, depending on, now look, I modeled my Tree Lord Ancient with his staff way up in the air. So he's going to be difficult and his branches, whatever, but Table War is a really good solution. Let me check it out. I thought that putting the shelves together, because the shelves are modular, you can kind of arrange them however you like, and you can, so they have ways to, like uniformly line up all your bases and stuff on trays with dividers and stuff, or you can make it like mini dioramas and kind of like build out sceneries for display and stuff. And so I was a little bit nervous about that. But I sat down, I think I got my entire Sylvaneth in that case, and in the way I like it, everybody stored securely on magnets, on the metal trays, in maybe 30, 45 minutes. In the same time it would have taken me to pluck foam and arrange stuff in other solutions.
That's
I
great.
I like what you bring up about just certain models not fitting into foam elegantly, and creating like custom foam to fit some of those models can get really pricey. Having that space and that ability to just kind of like set it in there and know it's going to be okay. I know a lot of people that travel with those cases, like put them in carry-on or whatever in an overhead in an airplane, and they just walk around with it. It's just fine.
I do not want to give the impression that Table War is not pricey. It is a premium product. It is.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, come on. Does any other case have a cup holder on it?
This has 2 cup holders. Mine has.
That's right. Now
that's classic.
There you go. I got a Table War case years ago. What was that? Right at the tail end of, I guess right at the beginning of 6th edition or whatever. It was the very first tournament the GT I ever went to. And I got a Table War case for my army, and I went whole hog on it though, Paul. Like I made every tray was a little mini diorama for my army.
But you can do that. It lends itself to doing that.
Yeah, and well, the great thing was all I had to do was slide that out, and I asked them before. I said, "Is this okay to count as my display board?" And they're like, they said, "Well, let us see." And I set out the trays and just set them beside each other, and I got all my points for. Actually, I placed in painting for that. Using a Table War case. So I used my case as my display board as well, and it was a really good system to have, and I like it. Now I will say that the case is a little heavy, so you're going to get an arm workout for it. But
I like cases from lots of different brands. I mean, I think that some of them are better at other things, and this is what really attracted me to this, is because my Sylvaneth, I know for a fact we're not going to survive hanging out in foam and because I put a lot of time into them. I mean, I plan to play them on camera and stuff, and I want them to be a showcase army, and the models themselves are, they're a little fiddly with the branches and stuff.
Yeah,
and
you can ask Paul. You can ask any Sylvaneth player like how many times before each game they go, "Oh crap, because a branch has broken off or something because they're pulling them out of foam. So you're absolutely correct.
I never have to worry about that. Never going to have to worry about that. And
you would not have to worry about your Sylvaneth at all.
No, this is one of those things. This is time where I think it's absolutely worth it.
I'm sorry. Hold up. Did Chris just say would not like?
Well, I'm trying to branch out to other kinds of humor.
Stop.
I don't know if that's another kind of humor.
It's so cringeworthy every time.
It's like if you acknowledge it, it encourages him. But if you don't acknowledge it, he's going to keep doing it.
It's a relentless onslaught of trying to work him in.
I think Ricky's kind of got to the root of the problem.
I don't know the right answer here.
Well, let's talk about this Diametra Domododo, the Dimmadog.
The Dima. It's the Dima.
Domododo.
The Domododo.
That's my favorite.
It's out.
We need a tier name.
It's not in the Codex. This is out of the Imperial Armor Index Xenos. I think I'd seen the model before, but I didn't remember seeing the model. They pointed me to the model because Andrew, you were talking about how gorgeous the model is, just how cool it looks.
Yeah, it's the model when it first came out, because it's a relatively recent Forge World release. So this is not a model that's been around for like 10 years or something. It's relatively recent, maybe 3-4 years ago. And when I first saw it, it single-handedly made me was like, well, I guess I have to play Tyranids now. I need this model in my life. And I literally. I'm not proud of this, but I was in law school. I got my student loan direct deposit, and I was drunk one night, and I just ordered one from Forge World. I was like, I need this in my life, and I got one. I was like, it's still unbuilt, still unpainted. But it's just truly, in my opinion, one of the best-looking models, figurines in all of Warhammer 40k. And I think that's relatively high praise. Considering just the full width and breadth of the model range in the game we play.
I mean, he's pretty vicious looking. I mean, he's a threatening looking model. I mean, I can see
and
it.
He's big. You got to find a picture of him as if you're at home listening to the show or if you're at work or something. Just Google it real quick. Get a picture that shows him to scale. Or that shows other models in the picture with him, because you don't really get a full appreciation for how massive the model is. He's roughly the same size, maybe a little bit bigger than the plastic Lords of Change that came out last year. Considerably taller and wider than a Trigon. So a really big, menacing, incredibly just sexy model. And as it turns out, I mean, the rules were really, really bad for him in 7th edition. The Forge World book hadn't caught up. Namely, he was just too slow. He moved 6 inches a turn, which is just
even those long legs.
With those long legs,
he was so disappointing. He was so disappointing. Like, people would build armies, and like your strategy was, how do I get this guy into
across the table?
Yeah, it was like,
exactly.
Can he get there in time? Usually, it was no. You can't.
The answer was almost uniformly no. Fortunately, now that the times have changed, and I think GW, to their credit, was like, hey man, we've got this incredible model, and I'm sure they got some feedback on how bad the rules were, and they upgraded him at 200 points. He is right in the wheelhouse of a good upper level Tyranid monstrous creature.
Well, he hits on 2s. He's a melee monster with 6 attacks. Hits on 2s at full strength.
That's hits on 2 with hits on 2s with 6 attacks. 14 wounds. That's a lot with a 3+ armor save and a 5 invulnerable, and a toughness 6. Has a good amount of durability. But it's the weapon profiles that get me the most excited. He absolutely is a crushing close combat monster. And if you're gonna play an assault style Tyranid list, right, which is what Paul you were just talking about, how hey, if you're gonna go down, there's basically 2 archetypes for Tyranids. You either go heavy shooty or heavy assault, and historically the hybrids of those two haven't been particularly effective. And if you're going to go that heavy assault route and you want to use the big monstrous creatures as opposed to mobs of Gene Stealers or mobs of Gaunts or whatever, this guy is going to be a contender. At 12 inches a turn, he's going to cover the board quickly. He's got great durability. And then once he touches you, He turns people into glue in a hurry.
His grasping talons and thorax spine maw is a melee weapon, which is strength 7, -2 AP, 1 damage when targeting infantry units. Each wound roll of a 6+ is made with this weapon is resolved at strength ×2 and damage D6. But then he's got the sickle claws, which is strength 10, -2 AP, damage D3, and then if a hit roll with his weapon is a 6, resolve that hit at AP -4 with damage D6.
Yeah, so he's got basically exploding hits and wounds, depending on the weapon type you're using. With 6 attacks hitting on 2s, you've got really good odds of getting a 6 or 2 into those rolls. Which, you know, if you're swinging against a vehicle or whatever, a Primarch, with a strength 10 -4 AP D6 damage weapon. You know, I rolled a couple of 6s on the 2 wound rolls or something like that. You're going to blow
with
some
6
stuff
attacks,
up.
You can rely on
reasonably
one,
count
right?
on getting 1. Yeah, you can. Yeah, mathematically, you're going to consistently get 1. That's a big deal. And it's not like the base attacks are bad, right? Especially because most of the stuff that you're going to be attacking with at that profile are going to have invulnerable saves. So the -4 AP
strength 10 moves you into that wounding on 2s category a lot more often.
Very much so. Very much so. And at 200 points, I mean, he's less than half the price.
He's got more rules too. I mean, this is if the Dimetro Dodo kills one or more infantry models in the fight phase with his grasping talons and thorax spine maw, it gains a 5+ invulnerable save for the remainder of the battle. So it's not an all the time invulnerable save, but as soon as it starts killing things, it's got the invulnerable save. And then it's got the leaper killer rule. When this model moves, do not count any vertical distance it moves against the total it may travel. That will come up more often than you think.
I think it'll come up more often now with this edition, with how people are building a lot more line of sight blocking terrain, like big walls and stuff like that, and tall building type terrain. You're going to see stuff like that becoming way more useful.
This is a fast attack choice, by the way.
It doesn't matter. This thing could have the worst rules ever, and it's still going to see the table, because 7th edition showed us that he was almost a liability in 7th edition, and I know two people that their Tyranid list always had that in there because the model is so cool, and it's a centerpiece model. You know, it's so big and so impressive, and it's a great model. It could have the worst rules ever, and it's going to still see play. Fortunately, they finally got the rules where this thing needs to be, and I'm pretty excited about seeing it on the table. I'm less excited because now I have less time to shoot it off the table before it gets to me. But
it does have the high fleet rule, so you can apply.
Oh, goody!
Yeah.
Stuff to it.
It's definitely going to get those perks. It's going to benefit from the new stratagems. And the high fleet options. You know, hey man, now you're moving +1 inches if you take a behemoth again. You know, that's the kind of the.
Rerolling charges with Behemoth +1 with the adrenal glands.
I'm sorry, correct. And the adrenal glands are not an option for this, but all the same, moving 12, rerolling your assault range for 600 points. If you could take multiples of these, my God, it's just so exciting to think about. The model looks so cool, and I'm a big fan of the Daima.
And this thing could benefit from something like the Swarm Lord's extra move, right?
It has the high fleet, so yeah.
Yeah, so
the Swarm Lord is pretty cool. I like how the characters in the book here, like what we would consider to be like special characters before that you might have thought had a determined hive fleet, do not. You can use them in any of the hives, which I think is cool because all these are all just like adaptations of things that become this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's really cool.
And the Swarm Lord's ability is in each of your shooting phases, you can pick one friendly high fleet unit within 6 inches of the Swarm Lord. That unit can move and advance if you wish, as if it were the movement phase instead of shooting.
So 24-inch move, Demicheron, anyone?
Didn't reroll on charges. Yeah,
That's
sold.
Yeah. So anyway,
that seems pretty good. I'm with you on that.
And ultimately, it's I know we've probably banged this drum hard enough, but it's the model that makes me want to play this unit, not just the Stone Cold rules. They're good, not great, but good. And I think you're going to get a lot of jollies if you acquire 1 or 2 of these things and get them put them on the table.
Have you guys ever seen a Harrowspecs on the table?
I've seen it on the table at like a narrative event before.
I think they got some pretty good rules now. I don't know how this applies or what they had in the index, but they have a rapacious hunger. Each time the Horsepeck slays an enemy with its ravenous maw, it can immediately make one extra attack with its shoveling claws. In addition, at the end of a fight phase in which a Horsepeck slew any enemy models with its ravenous maw, it regains 1 wound lost earlier in the battle. It's got 13 wounds with a 3+ armor save. Hits on 4s. That's one of the unfortunate parts. But the ravenous maw make D3 hit rolls for each attack made with this weapon instead of 1. I think that anytime you see that, you've got to kind of maybe give it a second look as something that may help, deal with a problem that you might be having in your current environment.
Now, this is the one, right, that's kind of like the Tyranid equivalent of Yoshi, right? Just kind of sticks out that tonguey thing and tries to eat people.
It's pretty horrifying looking. It's pretty horrifying looking.
Has a grasping tongue also, so yes.
That thing is all mouth.
The grasping tongue is not bad. You can fire it like a pistol.
This is just the model that just makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, and if you slay a model with it, it also gains back a wound. So this thing walks around eating people, gaining wounds, and with 13 wounds, it can absorb some damage, and you can get it up there. And it's got 4 base attacks, and the attacks never go down. On its wound chart, the strength goes down. It starts out at strength 7 for its base profile, and the strength goes down. But things like the shoveling claws are strength times 2. So at full wounds, you are swinging strength 14. This is a toughness 8 model.
The thing that kills me about this model is, man, I'm looking at this. This is an expensive toy. It's a $73 model on the Games Workshop website. It's pretty crazy town.
Doesn't it make the exocrine also?
It does.
The toxicrine, right?
No, exocrine.
Exocrine, okay.
Yeah, if you scroll down, this kit,
the Horsepecs or exocrine. That's right.
I'm gonna be honest,
it's a big weighty model. I mean, it's a giant model.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, I had to Google it though just to remember which one it was because I think you're right. I don't
no
ever
one's ever seen it.
No one ever. Yeah. So that's always fun when we get to see those never used units.
It's an assault unit, so we're talking about loading up on things. Now, I think you're probably going to want to load up on Carnifexes and stuff like that, especially Old One Eye can buff other Carnifexes. But, maybe you just like playing with these cool big old models.
Well, to me, that's half the fun of playing a Tyranid army is these big monsters. Like, I get that Gene Stealers are a vital part of the army and they're good, but that's not what excites me about Tyranids. It's these big, horrifying monsters that, it's like nightmare fuel aliens that are coming after you. So, I like units like this, so that's exciting to me.
I think I can get behind that because the exocrine did go up in points, like we talked about. It's 216 points now base, which is more than it was, and so it's a little bit harder, I think, to make that good Firebase in your backfield than it was before. That may be pushing people towards more assault-based armies.
Well, good, because when Tyranids were the premier shooting army in 40k, it felt wrong. I like seeing Tyranids assault things and eat people.
We've got some pretty diehard Tyranid players here in Atlanta, and I know that basically every meta across the country has there's that one guy, right, who's just like all he cares about is just Tyranids, and you're in your group chat or your local gaming night with your local gaming club, and he's like, man, I got these mucoloids and they've got these toxicrene glands and these scything talons, and you're like, dude, I don't even know what you're saying. I'm just like, I have no idea. You're
just
speaking
tell me the
language.
stats. 100%. Like that's every conversation with the Tyranid player. They're just rattling off these words, and I'm like, you are not even talking about English.
What are you even saying? And it's funny because it's like I don't know that those words are substantively any different from all the Eldar words, but somehow the Eldar words are just like more palatable. Like when a Tyranid player like starts just like popping off about how excited he is for the new Codex, I eyes glass over and they roll in the back of my head, and I can't even listen to you. But we all know those guys, right?
Yeah.
And if you talk to those dudes, I can promise you, none of them enjoyed playing 5 Hive Tyrants. They were like, oh, the Codex Twin Link Devourer. that was 6th and 7th edition for Tyranids players, and
it was just so dominant. You couldn't not play it.
Correct, and but it wasn't fun for them. They didn't love it. It wasn't in the spirit of their codex. Wasn't in the spirit of their army. And so they were winning tournaments and competing at RTTs and GTs with all these flying tyrants. But they were like, this isn't. It would be a bit like if the Blood Angels subtly had one of the most dominant shooting units in the game, and then the whole point of your army was to spam 5 of them. That would be sucky for a Blood Angels player.
They never told you their list excitedly. It was always like Hive Tyrants, yeah.
You'd walk up to the table and be like, "Oh, how many do you have? 4 or 5?" And they'd be like, "I have 4." And you're like,
"They were
okay,
all apologetic about it."
Yeah, and honestly, it was like stealing the joy from.
It was a thing where Tyranid players couldn't even be excited to play their own codex. It was just the way the game was set up, and now they're excited again. Their army does what it's supposed to do, at least thematically. It finally feels like, it
looks like it will, yeah.
Well, exactly. And name butchering aside for some of this stuff, I mean, I think things have a place, and where I'm going with it, I'm seeing things like, oh man, I want to take some of that, or I want to experiment with this. I'm starting to see things kind of form up in my mind that forms themey list. And I know I harped on it a little bit before, but even like the named characters, like I can't take Eldrad in my Eldar list, right? Because I play Beltan, and that wouldn't work or whatever. But I can take everything in the Tyranid Codex and make it my own.
Yeah, that is really cool.
It's good. I mean, think if Astra Militarum, if every regiment could have Pask and a Punisher, that's essentially what we're saying here. So, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that is not bad. And we're talking about just base stats right now. We're not even talking about like some of the real stuff, like combining these stratagems, even though, we talked about like the ones that give extra damage or the, what is the Zoanthrope kill shot we talked about last week. I think that is going to see some real play. I think Zoanthropes and the Neurothrope and the HQ slot and all that stuff is going to see some real play.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to see natural counters to Smite armies show up and start swinging their big sticks around, saying, "Hey, you're going to have to plan on dealing with one of me. How are you going to handle your killing power without Smite?"
Yeah, and Smite will change too, by the way, which is why we're seeing, I think, so many of these psychic charts and stuff get their own kind of new mortal wound generators, so they'll have something to do outside of Smite. But let's also not forget that the Tyranids slow down your psychic ability while increasing their own. I mean, I shouldn't say increasing, while maintaining their own and all being psychers. Like almost half your army is going to have some psychic potential.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And we're seeing that with the Demon Prince spam. I don't want to use the term spam too harshly. You're seeing this
Demon
in
Prince
a lot.
Redundancy.
Yeah, there it is. The Department of Redundancy department of Demon Princes, where you're seeing 3, 4, 5 Demon Princes show up in a lot of chaos lists, where we're seeing just how powerful Smite is on a super mobile platform. You can get those models to where they need to be to do the most damage with their offensive psychic output, that being Smite spam. I fully anticipate the chapter approved at the end of this year changing the way Smite works. I could be wrong on that. I would be aghast if Smite doesn't change how it works, but nonetheless, I don't think that's going to diminish the fact that the flying monstrous creatures, whether they're Hive Tyrants or any of the other psychic winged monstrous creatures, that level of mobility with psychic potential is a lot of big upside.
Yeah, especially so with their own psychic tree being, I mean, the psychic stream is if manifested, the nearest enemy unit within 18 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds, and they could lose a psychic power.
Yeah, that sounds real familiar.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. It's Smite with an upside. So let's just say Smite changes. You're still packing 2 Smites, but one's a Smite plus.
Exactly right.
Yeah, and then there's a horror ability. The horror has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select a unit within 24 inches that is visible to the Psyker. At the start of your next Psychic phase, must subtract 1 from hit rolls and leadership characteristics. So there's all kind of debuffs, and I mean they are having this aura and manifestations of things that tear down the enemy, while basically keeping their big stats, their high stats, their high toughness, harder to kill, lots of wounds, and their aura of all the breakdowns, the debuffs. That's probably the best way. They have a lot of debuffs. That's where I was going. Long way of saying that.
And you can really, because of their mobility, you add their movement ability to whatever that range of their psychic power is. If you really need to debuff a particular thing, say you're playing against a Titan or something, and you're 32 inches away, well, that's fine. You get that big movement phase with those wings, and then the 24-inch range and the debuff power. So changing that to an effective strike range of 36 inches plus, depending on advance rolls, is really, really strong.
I think we're going to see a lot of the Chronos, because that's the big anti-psyker stuff. They are the ones that have the stratagem that for one command point you can force a psyker within 24 inches to only roll one die for their psychic test, which is pretty good. And then there's a relic that they take mortal wounds if they fail a psychic test. The enemy takes mortal wounds.
I like that one. That'd be really fun with Brimstone spam. They're already at -1, and then take mortal wounds if they fail. That shuts that whole list down.
Yeah, I mean,
anytime you can force those kinds of tough choices is going to be a win.
Well, the reason I like it is because it forces those choices before you ever get to the table. It's going to be a tough decision now for these demon players who rely on, massive amounts of Brimstone horrors, and that, what we've all come to know and love of just Brimstone spam. Now all of a sudden, do you bring that? Do you even build your list knowing that you may run into a Tyranid list?
I'm sorry, I said it was a relic before. It's the Warlord trait Soul Hunger that states if an enemy fails a psychic test within 18 inches of your Chronos Warlord, they take D3 mortal wounds. Apologies.
His soul is going to be hungering for the day he went and take a mortal wounds, smite spamming.
Yeah, I mean, what you were going though with the Brimstones, and if you force somebody critical to, I mean, like even, and I pointed this out in the article I put on Bowls, but it's Magnus. You could force Magnus to only roll one die. Now he got his +2, but if he fails, he's eating some mortal wounds for the gaze of Magnus.
It does seem like a good, fairly effective demon combatant. Because of the demon dependency on the psychic phase. Not dependency, but just like the power that the demon codex
Well, one of the things
harvests.
that's so powerful about the demons is, or especially with the Chaos Space Marine side, is the warp time. So if you can shut down that warp time, you can pretty much waylay a strategy from a Chaos player.
Yeah, it's definitely an effective counter to the way Chaos Soup operates right now. Shadows of the Warp against like Malefic Lord spam. Hey, I changed the odds of you effectively smiting by a considerable percentage just by having somebody in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
that's
doing something he was going to be doing anyway, flying over there to kill you.
Exactly right. So that's a big deal, and it's especially a big deal. And I know that we're talking about this a little bit of a rabbit hole, but anybody who has taken a look at the field for Wars in Atlanta, if you've taken a look at the lists, a massive majority of the overall field is Chaos Soup. Right now, there's no doubt that Chaos is the soup du jour of competitive tournament players right now. Something like 55 to 60% of the Warzone field is Chaos. So if you want to be able to compete with them, or you're going to have to compete with them, and so you might as well have these kind of intrinsic benefits for that matchup.
For what is essentially no points. Some of the stuff is free. A Warlord trait, a command point use, your base, abilities, Shadow of the Warp being that the case. Yeah, I think they're going to be strong. That's why I was leading to self. The Chronos is going to be strong, and I think Behemoth is going to be really strong because of that, the ability to ensure more charges. If you can hit the enemy reliably on turn 2 with 80% of your force, you're going to put a lot of damage on the opponents.
And really, with the way that Behemoth works and kind of ubiquitous nature of adrenal glands, not everybody can take them, but basically everybody can take them.
A lot of things can take them, and they cost different points. They're slightly more expensive on monsters, but not much. Adrenal glands on a monster is 5 points. Adrenal gland on any other unit is 1 point.
That is huge for that +1 inch. That's going to make a big difference. And I guess the point of that whole story is you're not necessarily waiting until turn 2. If you're deep striking with Behemoth and adrenal glands, we talked about this earlier in the show, that style of assault-centric army is going to be big, especially with the way that GW has deftly handled the conscript blob. That screen has been effectively nullified. And I have no doubt, there's literally no doubt in my mind, that the ridiculous power of brimstones will be curtailed during chapter approved as well. So as the screens are kind of systematically taken away, the ability to drop in and assault is going to get better.
Well, I love the screens, man. Just talking about just from a player point of view right now, I love the ability to have those screens, and then but some of it's because of the math. Like, it's just difficult. I know it's difficult, so I'm going to get to kind of maneuver in position and play, that kind of game. But in a lot of cases, they're just kind of fun sponges. Like, you have to build something that's dedicated to removing those screens if you're going to compete. Now, obviously in a tournament, you should take things that help you win and beat things and beat people, right? But in like casual games or whatever, I don't know that I wouldn't play my Renegade list casually because no one wanted to fight. No one likes fighting those zombies fighting those zombies.
It's I guess. And we've had this conversation on the show many times throughout 7th edition, going all the way back to 6th. When a unit is an auto-include, that's a bad unit. That's a poor rules design if you're going to play this army, you must play with this particular unit. And right now for Chaos, that's Brimstones.
Where I was going with this on the other side of it is that if those type of screen mechanics do get reduced and something modified, the game is robust to endure that. And if we're all playing a more dynamic game where models get removed and stuff like that, I think the game's better off. So I wouldn't mind heading in that direction. So even if that means changes to brimstones and obviously conscripts and zombies and whatever.
And I don't mean to be hyperbolic. There's tons of chaos and
yes, you do.
Whatever about sometimes. But I think that Paul, you and I are basically having a giant agree fest right now. Some part of the screening gameplay is really engaging and fun. It's challenging for the person trying to set up the right screen and to prevent the assaults and so on and so forth. But when it becomes a inherent, every competitive tournament game you're going to play consists of screening units, it's kind of a fun sponge.
Well, I mean, and also I'm not saying I necessarily envy the job of the game designers, because I believe that every style of play should be valid. If I want to play a horde army, I should be able to play that, because it exists. It exists as a buildable thing in a codex, right? But there's a lot of moving parts. We're not going to solve it on this show. I'm just saying that I wouldn't be sad if things like that changed, because I think it will create a more fun game for everybody. But I still also want the ability to have that exist without being a fun sponge. That's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and maybe this is one of those grass is greener situations where as soon as those screens go away, they've nerfed the conscripts. Hypothetically, they nerf the brimstone horrors and make them, I don't know, whatever, make them cost what they should, so 14 points a model.
That's if they oddly change, specific.
Yeah, oddly specific.
Where did you get that?
Just off the top of my head, no big deal. But if they change that, maybe in a year we're all just complaining about how Gene Stealer Cult is assaulting everyone on turn 1. There's nothing anybody can do about it. So there's certainly the cautionary tale of the neighbors.
Yeah, careful what you wish for. Obviously.
Exactly.
Hey, as long as when the Blood Angel Codex comes out next month, I'm the one that's charging people on turn 1. It's okay.
Yeah. All right, well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Tune in for the live stream this weekend. We will be streaming out to YouTube and some stuff pointing people to YouTube off Facebook and stuff like that, where we'll be talking with actual good painters. Like people that can win best painted awards and stuff at large events and doing some finishing move style techniques there. I'm really looking forward to it, where we can actually, because we got some amazing painters there that are coming, and I can't wait to see their stuff and what they're doing. And we'll get a chance to talk to them over the course of the coverage of the weekend. And that's how we're going to fulfill our finishing move commitment for these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on the photos and things coming from Warzone. I want to know what the armies are. I want to know who's doing well. Andrew, I expect updates. Ricky, try not to all over everybody.
Try your best.
Drunken text
often. I was over at the guy who won best appearance last year, Luke Slothauer. I was over at his house tonight, and he showed me his 3 Golden Demon Awards. And I was like,
no big deal.
Okay, I guess that you're pretty good at this then. So
wow.
Definitely tune in. The finishing moon segments will prove themselves.
Y'all have a great rest of your night. Thanks for talking about Tyranids with us. Next week, we'll be back to our more normal schedule. We do have some more author interviews coming up, too. So, please keep those 5-star reviews coming in iTunes and listen to the content.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
See ya.
Good.